Chapter 32:14. Also, it's best to raise your law of death and law of cause and effect, because only these two laws can suppress the core disciples of the three forces. Elder Hua added, "You know my law of death?" Frenzy was stunned. Qin Feiyang's law of cause and effect wasn't a secret to Elder Hua, but Frenzy's law of death was only revealed recently. Furthermore, it was in the Hall of Fame. If the Rogue Cultivator Alliance can bribe our Demon Hall's elder, then our Demon Hall naturally has the ability to do so. So, is it difficult to know your situation? Elder Hua smiled proudly. All right. Frenzy nodded. The disputes between these forces were really complicated. Old Qin, I have already comprehended the fourth profound of the law of death, but I can't figure out the fifth one. Isn't there some law of life and death in your six-word divine art? Can you give me some hints? Frenzy turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, I was hoping for you to give me some hints. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Until now, he still couldn't figure out if the law of life and death in the six-word divine art was the law of life and death. Looks like I can't count on you. Frenzy shook his head and smiled. Then I can only look for your master. Up to you. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The deputy leader also grasped the law of death. If he was willing to help Frenzy, then it would indeed be an opportunity for Frenzy. However, Frenzy's problem was easy to solve. But what about his law of cause and effect? No one in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance grasped the law of cause and effect. Elder Hua laughed. Regarding the law of cause and effect, this old man can give you some pointers. Please tell me. Qin Feiyang's spirit rose when he heard this. My Demon Hall's Hall Master grasped the law of cause and effect. Elder Hua smiled. This, Qin Feiyang was stunned. Why didn't you say so earlier? Frenzy frowned. If he had said so earlier, then Qin Feiyang would have gone to the Demon Hall's Hall Master and might have already comprehended the fifth profound. Qin Feiyang didn't display the law of cause and effect at the start. Elder Hua pouted. Unreliable old bastard. Madman muttered. What are you mumbling about? Elder Hua was suspicious. Of course I'm saying that you're a person of virtue and prestige, who is revered by tens of thousands of people. Do you think I'd say anything bad about you? Madman chuckled. Do you think this old man is that stupid? Elder Hua rolled his eyes. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, If you really want to consult the Hall Master, this old man can help you ask. Then I'll leave it to you. Qin Feiyang was very grateful. Elder Hua smiled, and the shadow disappeared. Then there's no time to lose. Shall I go and look for the Vice Alliance leader now? Madman asked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded, and then reminded him, since you're asking for advice, you should have a good attitude. I know what I'm doing. Don't worry. Madman waved his hand impatiently. Qin Feiyang shook his head and waved his hand, sending Madman out. Although Madman had become a disciple of the Hall of Famers, with his talent and comprehension, the Vice Alliance leader shouldn't make things difficult for him. Now he was the only one left. Would the Demon Hall Master agree to help him? He pondered over the Karma Law while waiting patiently. Black Tortoise World. Day after day passed. On the morning of the 10th day, Qin Feiyang's voice transmission god stone finally reacted. He quickly took it out, but he was happy for nothing. The person who sent the message was Madman. At this moment he was standing in a room, and his eyes were filled with excitement. He agreed? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Under this old man's relentless efforts, he finally agreed to personally guide me. Madman smiled proudly and asked, What about you? Any response from the other side? Not yet. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Don't give up. Good luck. After saying that, Madman turned off the voice transmission god stone. Who are you talking to? At this moment, the Vice Alliance leader walked into the room with his walking stick. With your disciple. Tell him the good news. You agreed to teach me. Madman chuckled. You two little fellows. The Vice Alliance leader shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that you didn't become my disciple. Madman immediately became emotional. Although we aren't master and disciple in name, in my heart I have always treated you as my master. Glib tongue. The Vice Alliance leader laughed and said, Follow this lord to the secret room so that no one will disturb you. Secret room? Madman was stunned. There was actually a secret room hidden here. When Madman followed the Vice Alliance leader to a well in the backyard, the Vice Alliance leader stepped on the ground and the neat ground immediately cracked open. A secret passage slowly appeared. Next, Madman followed the Vice Alliance leader into the secret passage. The secret passage spiraled downwards. After walking for about half a mile, 2 stone doors finally appeared in front of them. This is where this lord used to cultivate in seclusion. No one will disturb us here. The Vice Alliance leader chuckled and opened one of the stone doors. A secret room about 100 feet wide appeared in front of Madman's eyes. Inside the secret room, there was nothing but an old cushion. It seemed extremely empty. Then, whose cultivation room is this? Madman glanced at the secret room and then looked at the closed stone door on the side and asked curiously, This cultivation room? The Vice Alliance leader looked at the stone door with a trace of pain in his eyes. This is my son's cultivation room. Your son, isn't that Brother Ye's father? Madman was stunned. That's right. However, after my son's death, this cultivation room has never been opened again. The reason for that is because his memorial tablet is currently enshrined in this place. The Vice Alliance leader sighed deeply and entered the secret room. Brother Ye's father is dead? How did he die, and what about his mother? Could it be? Madman hurriedly followed in and asked in surprise. You guessed right, they are both dead. Moreover, they have been dead for many years. Let's not talk about it. Sit down. I'll explain the secrets of the laws of death to you. The Vice Alliance leader shook his head and pointed at the cushion. All right. Madman nodded and suppressed the doubts in his heart. He sat on the cushion and listened attentively to the Vice Alliance leader's explanation. Black Tortoise World. Another 10 days passed. The divine sound transmission stone rang once more. Qin Feiyong hurriedly took it out and activated it. A fiery red figure appeared. Who else could it be but Elder Hua? How is it? Qin Feiyong immediately asked. Even though 20 days had passed in the Black Tortoise World, only a short while had passed outside. The Hall Master agreed to help you. Come to Black Phoenix Mountain. We'll wait for you there. Elder Hua smiled. Black Phoenix Mountain? Qin Feiyong was puzzled. Black Phoenix Mountain is near Cloud Sea City. After saying that, Elder Hua told Qin Feiyong the coordinates. I'll go right away. Qin Feiyong nodded and immediately left the Black Tortoise World. He found Black Dragon and asked him to bring him to the border, because with his half-step ruler cultivation, it would take him around an hour to travel from the Hall of the Exalted to the border. But Black Dragon was different. He could bring him there in a dozen breaths of time. At the border, after Zhang Diyuan opened the barrier, Qin Feiyong looked at Black Dragon and said with a smile, This is a private matter. You don't have to follow me. All right. Black Dragon didn't ask what private matter it was. He nodded and left. Qin Feiyong also disappeared at the end of the snow mountain. After leaving the Azure Wave snow mountain, he took out the gate of space and appeared above Black Phoenix Mountain. Black Phoenix Mountain. The mountain was like its name. It was like a black divine phoenix that emitted a majestic aura. At a certain spot on the mountain peak, 2 figures were standing side by side. One of them was Elder Hua, and the other was a woman around 30 years old. She wore a long dress and looked graceful and luxurious. Elder Hua. Qin Feiyong landed on the mountain peak and cupped his fists with a smile. You're here. Elder Hua turned and looked at Qin Feiyang. The woman also turned around slowly, revealing a face that wasn't inferior to the girl's. Her skin was crystal clear, her figure exquisite, and there weren't any crow's feet at the corner of her eyes. She exuded the charm of a mature woman. "She's our demon hall's hallmaster," Elder Hua explained. "Junior Qin, Feiyang greets. Lord Hallmaster." Qin Feiyang bowed. "Elder Hua has been paying attention to you since you entered the Sky Cloud realm. He has repeatedly praised you. At first, I thought he was exaggerating, but when you showed your talent in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and revealed 7 types of law force, I realized that Elder Hua wasn't wrong. You're a talent." The Demon Hall's Hall Master smiled and looked very amiable. "Hall Master, you flatter me. I'm just fooling around." Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand. "Whether it's fooling around or not, everyone knows in their hearts. Let's not talk about it. I can explain the law of cause and effect to you, but you have to agree to one condition," the Demon Hall's Hall Master said. "I'm all ears." Qin Feiyang had expected that the Demon Hall's Hall Master wouldn't agree to help him so easily, so he wasn't surprised at all. "Officially become a core disciple of my Demon Hall," the Demon Hall's Hall Master said. Qin Feiyang was stunned and frowned. "Didn't I tell Elder Hua that I'll participate in the exchange as a core disciple of the Demon Hall? Although you'll participate in the exchange as a core disciple of the Demon Hall, you're still not a disciple of my Demon Hall. I believe you can understand my difficulties. As the Demon Hall's Hall Master, I can't nurture someone who doesn't belong to the Demon Hall." The Hall Master smiled. Qin Feiyang fell silent. "There must be a reason why you've repeatedly rejected our invitations, right?" The Demon Hall's Hall Master looked at Qin Feiyang questioningly. "That's right." Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "Since we're here, I'll be direct. I haven't accepted Elder Hua's invitation because I still can't truly trust your Demon Hall." "You're very direct." Not only was the Hall Master not angry, but he even praised Xiao Qin. "Firstly, I believe Hall Master is aware of my background. Secondly, I have a sovereign weapon and an independent world. You must know that." Qin Feiyang said, "That's right. Back then, when Chu Yun rushed to the Heavenly Cloud Ocean to save you, she saw you using origin energy to fight against the Blood Hall's 3 sovereign weapons. We already thought of this back then." The Demon Hall's Hall Master nodded. Chapter 32:15. Since you've already thought of it, why don't you put yourself in my shoes? If it's you who has an independent world and a sovereign divine weapon, but your own strength isn't that great, how can you not guard against outsiders? Qin Feiyang said. "I have to guard against them." The Hall Master nodded. "That's why I don't dare to enter the Demon Palace, because I just came to the Sky Cloud realm and know nothing about the Demon Palace. What if you have other motives? Wouldn't I be a sheep in a tiger's den?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "What about now? Do you know something about the Demon Palace?" the Hall Master asked. "Over the years, I've been paying attention to the people of the Eastern Continent's evaluation of the Demon Palace. Overall, there's no problem. However, it's still the same thing. Everyone knows how to hide things. For example, the vice leader. During the time I spent with him, he was very kind and treated me like his own son. You would never expect him to be someone who colluded with the Blood Hall, but that's the truth. So, what's the Demon Palace like? I can't make a judgment yet." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Thank you for your honesty. Then we might as well interact more in the future. As the saying goes, time reveals a person's heart." The Hall Master smiled faintly. "Sure, I can also agree to officially join the Demon Palace. However, you can't restrict my freedom, and you have to trust me unconditionally. In other words, no matter what I do, no matter what position I stand on, you have to support me. Of course, I'm also a person with principles. Since I've agreed to join the Demon Palace, I definitely won't do anything that will harm the Demon Palace's interests. Qin Feiyang said. Okay. The Hall Master nodded and said, However, I have an additional condition. Speak. Qin Feiyang smiled. Madman Mo also has to join the Demon Palace. The Hall Master said. Actually, you don't have to do this. Senior brother Feng Zi and I have gone through life and death together. We've long trusted each other without a doubt. Our relationship is even closer than that of blood brothers. We have been through life and death together. So, as long as one of us joins your Devil Palace, the other one will become a member of your Devil Palace. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I like honest young people like you. The Devil Hall Master was very happy. It was the same for Elder Hua. After struggling for so long, he finally managed to convince these two brats to join the Devil Hall. The people of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance did not know Qin Feiyang's background, but he knew it very well. The addition of these two people was definitely the Devil Hall's fortune. Qin Feiyang said, Junior will ask another question. In the future, if we go to war with the Blood Hall, what will your Devil Hall choose? This was the main point. As long as he had the full support of the Demonic Palace, he would have the ability to truly contend against the Blood Palace. The Blood Hall has always been our Devil Hall's enemy. The Demon Hall Master smiled. Qin Feiyang also smiled. That was enough for him. Of course. We also hope that you all will treat our Demon Hall well. The Demon Hall Master smiled again. Whether it was Qin Feiyang or Madman Mo, they would definitely have amazing achievements in the future. They might even surpass them. At that time, if the two of them turned against each other, it would undoubtedly be a nightmare for the Devil Hall. So, since Qin Feiyang had made it clear, she would not hide it anymore. Didn't I say just now that I will not harm the Devil Hall? I will not do anything that will harm the interests of the Demon Halls. This promise is not just temporary but eternal. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Okay. The Demon Hall Master smiled happily and asked, Can you take us to your world for a tour? Of course. Qin Feiyang nodded. With a wave of his hand, the three of them immediately appeared in the sky above the Devil's land. What rich energy of the spirit vein and crystal vein! As soon as the two of them appeared, they could not help but feel shocked when they sensed the majestic energy, especially when they looked at the boundless medicinal field. Even with their mentality, they couldn't help but feel a storm in their hearts. The resources were not much worse than the Devil Halls. Every herb, every soul vein, and every crystal vein here was obtained from the outside with our own efforts. In order to create such a cultivation environment, we went through countless dangers. But fortunately, the heavens did not let us down. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly with a trace of pride on his face. Amazing. The Demon Hall Master and Elder Huo were sincerely impressed. Of course, the main reason is because of this. Qin Feiyang pointed at the ancient castle below. The Demon Hall Master and Elder Huo looked down and their eyes widened. A sovereign divine weapon. It can be said that without the ancient castle, the Black Tortoise world would not be where it is today, and we would not be here today. Qin Feiyang looked at the ancient castle with gratitude in his eyes. The ancient castle was one of the people he was most grateful to in his life. It's rare for young people nowadays to be able to maintain a grateful heart. Elder Huo chuckled. Yeah, in today's world, who can be relied on when it comes to benefits? The most typical example is the Zhao family. Because of their selfishness, they even harmed Zhao Shaojin. The Demon Hall Master shook his head and sighed. We can't generalize. Whether it's humans or beasts, they are both good and bad. Qin Feiyang smiled. You're very thorough. The Demon Hall Master nodded. Then he scanned the courtyard beside the ancient castle and asked, Are the people in those courtyards your friends? That's right. There are relatives, companions, and former enemies. Qin Feiyang smiled. Enemies? The Demon Hall Master and Elder Hua were stunned. Why would their enemies let them stay in the black tortoise world? My relationship with them is very complicated. I can't explain it in a short time. Anyway, it's fine as long as we have the same goal. Qin Feiyang smiled. The people he was talking about were naturally Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, and the demon ancestor. Can I understand it as being enemies but not enemies? Like friends but not friends? The demon hall master asked. I guess so. After all, no one can predict what happens in the world. Qin Feiyang nodded. Actually, this is the other side of karma. The demon hall master smiled. The other side? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. The so-called karma itself is intricate and complicated. It's like invisible threads that bind both parties together. Initially, you might be enemies, but because of some relationship, you might become friends. Similarly, you might be friends at the beginning, but because of some reason, you might become enemies. In short, karma is everywhere. As long as you use your heart to feel it, you can feel it. The demon hall master smiled. You don't say. I really didn't think of this before. Qin Feiyang lowered his head. The fog in his mind seemed to be gradually dissipating. Swoosh! Suddenly, in the courtyard below, the mermaid princess flew up and bowed. Greetings, Elder Hua. It's you. Elder Hua looked at the mermaid princess with a smile on his face. Elder Hua had already seen the mermaid princess when they were in the space-time teleportation tunnel, so he had a deep impression of her. She is? The demon hall master was a little suspicious. She's the lover of Qin Feiyang that I told you about. Back then, in order to save her, Qin Feiyang fought Old Man Hai in the space-time teleportation tunnel. That scene could really be said to be a scene of anger for beauty. Elder Hua chuckled. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. The mermaid princess blushed. Qin Feiyang walked over and held the mermaid princess' hand. He smiled and said, This is the demon hall master. The mermaid princess was stunned. She quickly bowed and said, Greetings, Lord Hall Master. No need to be so polite. The hall master waved his hand. He glanced at the couple and then looked away. But suddenly, he looked at the mermaid princess again with a hint of surprise in his eyes. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang and the mermaid princess were a little confused. Do you control the law of life? The demon hall master asked in surprise. How did you know? The mermaid princess was surprised. I sensed it. There's an extraordinary life force in your body. Incredible. The law of life, the law of karma, and the law of death. You guys are really monstrous. The demon hall master shook his head and exclaimed. Elder, who also looked at the mermaid princess in shock. Suddenly he glanced at the courtyard below and said, Qin Feiyang, in the Wind Sea City, there was a person who controlled the law of space-time. Who is he to you? He's the ancestor of the Qin clan. Qin Feiyang smiled. The Qin clan? Looks like your clan isn't simple. Elder Hua said. Not at all. Qin Feiyang shook his head and looked at the mermaid princess. You go back first. I'll accompany them. Are you coming back for dinner tonight? The mermaid princess asked. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Then we'll have to see whether or not these two lords will dislike the simple and plain food you make. You little brat. Do you have to mock us in such a roundabout way? Elder, who couldn't help but laugh. Looks like the two lords don't dislike it. Then I'll have to trouble you. Qin Feiyang squeezed the mermaid princess's jade-like hand lovingly. The mermaid princess smiled and turned to leave. Elder, who praised, she's a good wife and mother. Brat, you're lucky to have found such a gentle and kind woman. Yeah, being able to marry her is the luckiest thing in my life. It's also the thing I'm most proud of. Qin Feiyang didn't hide his proud smile. Then lead the way. I'm looking forward to your black tortoise world more and more. The Devil Hall master smiled. Then let's go to the North region. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and led the two of them to the north of the Devil's Land. North region? The two of them were suspicious. In the Black Tortoise world, other than the Devil's Land, there are 5 other regions. They are the North region, West region, South region, East region, and Central region. Qin Feiyang explained the situation of the Black Tortoise world as they walked. The 3 of them seemed to be taking a stroll as they wandered around. Chapter 32:16. As the number of spirit veins and crystal veins increased, the Black Tortoise world grew faster and faster. The current Black Tortoise world was almost twice the size of the Divine Land. One could only imagine. The Middle Continent, Western region, Northern region, Southern region, and Eastern region were so vast. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that anyone below the imperishable realm would need at least 100 years to traverse the entire Black Tortoise world. Of course, it would be a different story if the teleportation altar was activated. Northern region, in the sky above a city. The city wasn't small, spanning tens of thousands of miles. Tens of millions of people lived there, and their average cultivation was at the Divine Lord realm. The strongest aura was at the half-step imperishable realm. However, the most eye-catching thing was the statue in the middle of the city. It was Qin Feiyang's statue. All the cities we passed by along the way have your statues. What's going on? Elder Hu looked at the statue and asked curiously. There's a reason for that. Qin Feiyang smiled. What reason? Elder Hu was puzzled. Once, I sacrificed my life to revive all the living beings in the Black Tortoise world, and I've been silently protecting them. So out of gratitude, they made a statue for me. Actually, I didn't think it was necessary, but everyone was too enthusiastic and I couldn't stop them. Qin Feiyang laughed. You sacrificed your life to revive all the living beings? Elder Hua and the Demon Hall Master looked at each other. What kind of method was that? In short, every living being in the Black Tortoise world, whether it's a human or a beast, is greatly indebted to me. Because of their support, I have the ability to fight against a sovereign weapon. So once I swore that as long as I, Qin Feiyang, am alive, I won't allow anyone to hurt them. Qin Feiyang said, Then, have you noticed that this is actually karma? Because you're good to them, they'll never abandon you. The Demon Hall Master chuckled. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He carefully recalled the past, and the doubts in his mind seemed to become clearer. How did they help you? It actually gave you the power to fight against a sovereign weapon. Elder Hu was extremely curious. Qin Feiyang smiled. With a wave of his hand, the 3 of them appeared above the Blood Sea in the Western region. Where's this? The 2 of them were bewildered. What a strong smell of blood. This is the Western region of the Black Tortoise realm. The entire Western region is like this. Qin Feiyang smiled. You mean the entire Western region is a sea of blood? Elder Hua was bewildered. That's right. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and many images of various sizes appeared in the void in front of him. In the picture, there were humans and ferocious beasts. Everyone was lining up to donate blood on the shore of the Blood Sea. What? Seeing this scene, even with Elder Hua and Elder Hua's temperament, they could not help but be extremely shocked. That's right. Every drop of blood in this sea of blood was contributed by them selflessly. Qin Feiyang nodded. Why would they do that? Elder Hua was bewildered. Qin Feiyang's body shook and the slaughter domain appeared. A monstrous killing intent surged out as he said, This is the slaughter domain. It uses blood as the source. The more blood it absorbs, the stronger it becomes. When it reaches its peak, it can fight against a sovereign divine weapon. I see. Elder Hua was enlightened. When I was in the lower realm, the slaughter domain helped me through many calamities. And all of this is inseparable from the support of every living being in the Black Tortoise realm. Even if there is no war now, they are still silently donating blood for me. Tell me, after seeing this scene, would anyone with a conscience not be moved? Therefore, instead of saying that they are my people, it is better to say that they are Qin Feiyang's relatives. Qin Feiyang smiled as he looked at the ferocious beasts and humans in the picture. His eyes were filled with gratitude. The Devil Hall Master and Elder Hua looked at each other. They admired the young man in front of them more and more. The living beings of the Black Tortoise Realm were willing to come to the Western region to donate blood. It wasn't hard to imagine how good Qin Feiyang usually was to the living beings of the Black Tortoise Realm. This is the so-called tit-for-tat, right? The Devil Hall Master smiled. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. The cycle of karma, the cycle of karma. These were all part of the law of karma. And tit-for-tat, he already knew about it. But at this moment, when he heard this from the Devil Hall Master, his feelings became different. It seemed to be more profound and thorough. Close your eyes and feel it. Actually, every living being in the Black Tortoise Realm has an unbreakable karmic connection with you. The Devil Hall Master smiled. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he closed his eyes and calmed his heart. He entered a state of no desire. Then he released his perception and slowly felt it. The Devil Hall Master glanced at Qin Feiyang and turned to Elder Hua. He smiled and said, "Let's go. We will walk around ourselves." "What about him?" Elder Hua asked inwardly. "His comprehension ability is really terrifying. Above the herb field, I vaguely mentioned the other side of the law of karma. He already comprehended it. Along the way, I kept reminding him. Although I didn't say it clearly, I could tell that he understood it. So now I don't need to say anything more. I will give him some time to comprehend it himself." The Devil Hall Master smiled inwardly and turned to leave quietly. Elder Hu glanced at Qin Feiyang and hurriedly chased after him. But is this enough? It definitely isn't enough for others. But Qin Feiyang is different. First of all, his comprehension ability is better than others. Second of all, he has too much karma in his life. Every blade of grass and every tree in the Black Tortoise Realm has an unbreakable relationship with him. So, in terms of the law of karma, he has an innate advantage that others don't have. In other words, the entire Black Tortoise Realm is his source. The Devil Hall Master smiled faintly. "I don't understand." Elder Hu shook his head. "If you did, you wouldn't have comprehended the law of time, but the law of karma. The law of karma focuses on cause and effect. It's very different from other laws." The Devil Hall Master chuckled. Elder Hu pondered for a while, but still couldn't figure it out. So he decisively gave up. The power of laws couldn't be forced. It depended on fate and luck. Of course, one also had to have the comprehension ability. Back to Qin Feiyang. At this moment, there was nothing in his mind. He wasn't thinking about anything. He was like a person without consciousness. His perception had already spread to the entire Black Tortoise Realm. Everything was in his eyes. He was the master of the Black Tortoise Realm. As long as he was willing, no living being could hide anything from him, and others wouldn't be able to sense that they were being spied on. Although the living beings of the Black Tortoise Realm were very united at critical times, there were still all kinds of disputes. For example, fighting for power, women, treasures, and some grudges. They would fight to the death. However, Qin Feiyang didn't care about any of this. He was like a passerby, silently looking at every living being and feeling the karma between them. Because no matter how united a place was, such disputes were inevitable, as long as everyone could unite in the face of the big picture. Of course, small fights were fine, but they couldn't affect the foundation of the Black Tortoise Realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't sit by and do nothing. Time quietly passed. In the evening, Elder Hua and the Devil Hall Master returned to the Devil's Land. After a day of asking around, they finally had a thorough understanding of Qin Feiyang. Basically, the living beings of the Black Tortoise Realm knew about Qin Feiyang's deeds. So, as long as they asked around, they would know everything. Moreover, they also asked about the origins of the dragon god's sword and the ice dragon sacred sword. They even found out about the grudges between Qin Feiyang and the two sovereign divine weapons. In the courtyard, the mermaid princess had already prepared the dishes. "Where's Feiyang?" Seeing that only the hall master and elder who had returned, a trace of suspicion appeared on her face. "He's comprehending the karma law. I don't think he'll be back in a short period of time." Elder Hua smiled. "So it's like that." The mermaid princess nodded in realization and smiled. "Then please take a seat." "Thank you, but there's no need. We already know what we want to know. Qin Feiyang has also comprehended something, so we'll take our leave first." The Devil Hall master smiled. "But the dishes are already prepared." The mermaid princess was startled. "I'm sorry. The exchange conference is about to begin. We still have to go back and prepare, so let's wait for the future." The Devil Hall master smiled apologetically. "All right." The mermaid princess nodded and smiled. "Then I'll go find Sister Fire Lotus and send you out." "Thank you for your trouble." The two of them were very polite to the mermaid princess. Soon, the mermaid princess brought Fire Lotus over. She pointed at Elder Hua and the Devil Hall master and smiled. "It's them." "Greetings, seniors." Fire Lotus bowed. "You're welcome." The Devil Hall master waved his hand. Fire Lotus smiled and looked at Elder Hua. "Senior Hua, I heard from Qin Dage that you seem to have comprehended the time law?" "Yes." Elder Hua nodded and asked, "What's wrong?" Fire Lotus's face lit up and immediately said, "Then this junior has a presumptuous request. Can you stay in the Black Tortoise world for a few days and explain the mysteries of the Force Law to this junior? You have grasped the time array?" Elder Hua was stunned. The Demon Hall's hallmaster was also stunned. "Yes." Fire Lotus nodded and released the power of the time law. Although Frenzy had obtained many mysteries of the time law from the Hall of Famers, there were still many things that she couldn't understand. "It really is the time law." Their eyes trembled. Karma law, space-time law, death law, life law, and now there was another strongest law, the time law. Just who were these people? Any one of these young people could be considered a top monster if they were to walk out of this world. "Elder Hua, can you do it?" Fire Lotus looked at him expectantly. Explaining in person would definitely be more detailed and easier to understand than Frenzy. Chapter 32:17. This, Elder Hua couldn't help but look at the Devil Hall Master. If the Devil Hall Master wasn't here, with his fondness for Qin Feiyang and Frenzy, he would definitely agree without hesitation. Moreover, although the Devil Hall had countless disciples, and there was no lack of monstrous geniuses, no one had comprehended the time law. Therefore, when Fire Lotus comprehended the time law, he was very happy. He had finally met a decent junior, but there was no other way. With the Hall Master present, he had to ask for his opinion. "What do you want to do? Can I stop you?" The Devil Hall Master shook his head and laughed. "Ha ha!" Elder Hua laughed and looked at Fire Lotus. "All right, this old man will stay and guide you, but you have to be more serious. If you're distracted, this old man will leave immediately. That's for sure." Fire Lotus was overjoyed. Elder Hua nodded his head in satisfaction. He looked at the Devil Hall Master and said, "Then leave the exchange to Chu Yen." "All right." The Demon Hall Master smiled. He then looked at Huolian and said, "Send me out." "Senior, take care." Fire Lotus bowed respectfully and waved her hand. The Devil Hall Master immediately disappeared in front of the three of them. Isn't the Black Tortoise world an independent world? Qin Feiyang is the master of the Black Tortoise world. How can you control the Black Tortoise world's rule power? Elder Hua looked at Fire Lotus in surprise. This junior has the authority to control everything. Fire Lotus smiled. So that's how it is. Elder Hua nodded his head in realization. To actually give such an important authority to this little girl. That meant that Qin Feiyang trusted her a lot. "What's your name?" Elder Hua asked. "Fire Lotus." Fire Lotus replied honestly. "Fire Lotus!" Elder Hua glanced at the Fire Lotus mark on Huolien's forehead and said with a smile, "We are indeed fated. You're called Huolien, and others call me Old Man Hua. Maybe we were even family in our previous lives." "Ha!" Fire Lotus laughed dryly. She didn't know how to reply. She was obviously trying to get close to him. Elder Hua smiled and said, "All right, let's not talk too much. Let's find a place where no one will disturb us." "Aren't you going to eat first?" the mermaid princess quickly asked. Fire Lotus said in a low voice, "How can I be in the mood to eat now? You can slowly eat by yourself." After he finished speaking, he looked at Elder Hua and said with a smile, "Senior, please follow me." After that, Fire Lotus led Elder Hua towards the castle. Why have they all become cultivation maniacs? Forget it, let's talk to Xiao Xian. The mermaid princess shook her head and walked towards the madman's courtyard. Inside the castle, Fire Lotus stood in the main hall and said with a smile, "Senior Hua, no one will disturb you here. Furthermore, you don't have to worry about time because the Black Tortoise World has a time array that lasts for a day and 1,000 years. Impressive." Elder Hua looked around. While praising, there seemed to be a trace of fear in his eyes, because he was currently inside the castle. If the castle wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping its hand. Suddenly, he looked towards a cultivation room on the second floor and muttered, "What a dense pill aura! That's Dan Wongkai refining pills. He's the most powerful alchemist here. Most of our pills are also provided by him." Fire Lotus smiled slightly. "They're all provided by him. Then, Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo's 7 dragon-shaped divine pills were also refined by him?" Elder Hua was surprised. "Yes, Dan Wongkai is just like his name. Other than refining pills, he's not interested in anything else. Even if he wants to cultivate, Qin Dage has to force him to do so." Fire Lotus shook her head and smiled. "Then he's really a true alchemist fanatic. But then again, if he's not so obsessed, how could he have such achievements?" Elder Hua chuckled. "That makes sense." Fire Lotus nodded. "Then is he the only alchemist here?" Elder Hua asked. "Of course not. Qin Dage is also an alchemist." Fire Lotus shook her head. "He's also an alchemist?" Elder Hua was stunned. "Yes. Qin Dage's alchemy talent is actually better than Dan Wongcai's." Fire Lotus nodded. "What?" Elder Hua was stunned. Back then, Dan Wongcai admired Qin Dage's alchemy talent and followed Qin Dage. However, after Dan Wongcai joined our family, Qin Dage basically did not come across any pills. So now he's not even as good as Dan Wongcai. It's considered a waste." Fire Lotus smiled. "Ah." Elder Hua was stunned. With such a good alchemy talent, it was actually wasted. Wasn't this a waste of God's gift? In fact, Qin Feiyang did not really waste it. Because of the soul refining technique, his mental energy was increasing at any time. Moreover, his mental energy had always been stronger than Dan Wongcai. So if he were to refine pills now, he would at most be rusty. In terms of quality, Qin Feiyang would definitely be better. Anyway, Qin Dage is a person who hates troublesome things. To him, alchemy is a troublesome thing. Fire Lotus smiled. "All right, who asked him to be a monster? A monster has the capital to be willful." Elder Hua nodded helplessly. Suddenly, he looked at a cultivation room on the first floor with a trace of surprise in his eyes. In this cultivation room, he actually felt an inexplicable fear. Moreover, it was a fear that came from the power of law. "Who's the person in there?" Elder Hua asked in surprise. "The white-eyed wolf. It's Qin Dage's partner. It has been with Qin Dage since they were young." Fire Lotus smiled. "A wolf?" Elder Hua was even more surprised. How could a mere wolf give him such a feeling? It seemed that anyone who was close to Qin Feiyang, be it a beast or a person, was not simple. The cultivation room on the first floor is for Qin Dage, the white-eyed wolf, and Frenzy. Let's go to the second floor. Hua Lian lightly smiled. Then she led Elder Hua to the second floor. Black Tortoise World. Time flew by. 100 years had passed. Western region. Qin Feiyang, who was standing above the Blood Sea, seemed to have forgotten where he was. In other words, he had entered a state of selflessness. Fortunately, he was in the Black Tortoise World. Otherwise, he would be in danger, because in his current state, anyone with a little bit of strength could kill him. At this moment, Qin Feiyang looked at the countless living beings in the Black Tortoise World. He seemed to see something faintly discernible in them. Another few years passed. These things he saw more and more clearly. It turned out that they were threads of karma that were inextricably linked to him. Judging from these threads, almost all the living beings in the Black Tortoise World had an unbreakable karma connection with him. Moreover, not only did he see the threads of karma between him and everyone, but he also saw the threads of karma of others. For example, a family, a force, and the people in a city were all connected by the threads of karma. In Qin Feiyang's eyes, the Black Tortoise World was covered with spider webs. Those spider webs not only connected everyone together, but they also tied everyone's fates together. Another 100 years passed. Qin Feiyang saw something different again. He realized that these threads of karma all carried different emotions, and he could clearly feel these emotions. Some were anger, some were hatred, some were love, some were jealousy, some were concern. In short, he could feel the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the world on these threads of karma. Why do these emotions exist? Qin Feiyang continued to observe. After another few decades, his calm face finally revealed a look of realization, and he opened his eyes. The 7 emotions and 6 desires that he felt on the threads of karma were actually the emotions that were transmitted between people. For example, he and the mermaid princess loved each other, so the love, concern, and so on were transmitted. Then there was Mu Tianyang. From Mu Tianyang's threads of karma, he could feel hostility, jealousy, and dissatisfaction. In other words, karma was also filled with the 7 emotions and 6 desires. After figuring this out, Qin Feiyang felt as if the clouds were parted and he saw the sky. His heart immediately became clear. This was the other side of the law of karma. He closed his eyes again. This time, the threads of karma were even more obvious. Boom! Soon, the law of karma in his body surged out uncontrollably. And in his perception, the thousands of threads of karma were also surging toward him. Gradually, a colorful divine light appeared in front of him. This divine light was filled with all kinds of karma, and it became brighter and brighter. In the end, it even illuminated the entire Western region. What's happening? The creatures at the edge of the Western region looked at the void that suddenly filled with colorful light, their eyes full of surprise. This seems to be the aura of the Lord Ruler. That's right, it's him. The Lord Ruler must be about to break through. Everyone, keep your voices down. Don't disturb him. You're thinking too much. Even if it's the Lord Ruler, he must be in the central area of the Blood Sea. How can he be disturbed from so far away? That's true. I'm curious. What is the Lord Ruler cultivating to actually produce such a divine light? Everyone looked at the center of the Blood Sea curiously. At this moment, not only Qin Feiyang, but the surrounding void was also drowned by the colorful light, as bright as the clouds. Clang! Suddenly, a sound like a divine weapon appearing sounded in the sky above the Western region, shocking everyone. In the next instant, a lotus flower suddenly appeared in the colorful divine light that drowned the sky. This lotus flower was about the size of an adult's palm. It was colorful, and it emitted a terrifying aura. The 5th profundity, divine lotus. At this moment, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, which were full of surprise. That's right. He succeeded. He had comprehended it. Boom! In the next moment, his aura also soared. In just a few blinks of the eye, his cultivation broke through to the initial stage of the ruler realm. I broke through, feeling the surging divine power in his body. Qin Feiyang was extremely excited, and the 5-colored divine lotus in front of him. He could clearly feel that it was much more powerful than the 5th profundity of the law of thunder. With this 5-colored divine lotus, as long as the other party did not grasp an ultimate law like the law of karma, he could crush anyone in the same realm as him. Chapter 32:18. At the same time that Qin Feiyang comprehended the 5th profundity, Madman was sitting on a cushion in his private room. His eyes were closed, and his expression was very serene. On the side, the vice leader was half lying on a reclining chair with his eyes closed. But suddenly, Madman frowned and slowly opened his eyes. There was a trace of confusion in his eyes. What's wrong? The vice leader opened his eyes and looked at him with a smile. After receiving your guidance, my comprehension of the law of death is much more thorough than before. I even have a feeling that the 5th profound is standing right in front of me. But I just can't break through this barrier. I feel like I'm still missing something. Madman frowned. What you encountered. This seat has also encountered it before. The vice leader smiled. Then what is the last point? Madman looked at the vice leader suspiciously. You can only comprehend it yourself. Once you comprehend it, you will succeed. However, this seat can give you a clear path. The vice leader smiled. Please speak. Madman's eyes were filled with expectation. Come closer. The vice leader sat up straight and smiled. Madman got up and walked in front of the vice leader and moved his head closer. The vice leader whispered something in Madman's ear. That's right, this sentence. But this sentence caused Madman's eyes to tremble and his face to turn pale. He looked at the vice leader and asked, Are you serious? This seat never jokes, the vice leader said. But Madman frowned. This is the fastest way. Of course, you have to have the ability to comprehend it, otherwise you will die. The vice leader said. Madman went silent. After a long time he laughed. What I like the most is taking risks, especially those that walk on the edge of death. The vice leader was stunned for a moment before he shook his head and smiled. You brat. Madman smiled and asked, Right. How long have I been in seclusion? Almost 200 years. The vice leader smiled. What? Almost 200 years? Madman immediately asked. Then isn't the exchange conference over? You also know about the exchange conference. The vice leader was taken aback. That's for sure. It's such a big deal that everyone is talking about it. Madman nodded. He had actually missed the exchange? The vice leader smiled and said, The exchange hasn't started yet. What? It hasn't started yet. Is there a delay? Madman was suspicious. No. The Vice Alliance master shook his head and smiled. I didn't tell you in advance, but this secret room has a 500-year time formation. That's why I brought you here. With the time formation, you won't waste too much time. Time array. Madman looked around the secret room in shock. Yes, back then when I asked your master to help me set up this time formation, it took me a lot of effort. I don't know what's wrong with this old thing. He just likes to go against me. The vice leader shook his head. That gave me a fright. I thought the exchange had already ended. Madman patted his chest. What is it? You brothers also want to participate in the exchange? The vice leader asked. Of course. The geniuses of the 4 superforces are gathering. We definitely have to go and take a look. Madman chuckled. Then you'll be disappointed. The vice leader shook his head. What do you mean? Madman was startled and looked at him suspiciously. I've already discussed with Old Man Chi. We won't allow you brothers to participate in the exchange, the vice leader said. Why? Madman frowned. Your talents are indeed very good. Even in the entire sky cloud realm, you're at the top. No one can surpass you. However, you still haven't matured. With your half-step ruler cultivation, you won't be their match. We're also thinking for you so that you won't accidentally die. This isn't just your loss, it's also the loss of my rogue cultivator alliance, the vice leader said with a smile. So you guys care about us that much? Madman grinned. Who asked you, brothers, to be our disciples? The vice leader shook his head and smiled. What about Yi Tian? Madman asked. It's even more impossible for him to participate. The people going this time are all older than you. The lowest cultivation is at the initial stage ruler realm. He's only at the peak undying realm. Isn't he just sending himself to death? In short, Tian is the same as you guys. He still needs time to grow, the vice leader said. All right, Madman nodded and smiled. Then I'll leave first. Thank you. I suddenly realized that you're quite a good person. Ah. The vice leader looked at Madman in shock and asked curiously, Then in your eyes, what kind of person was I? You really want to know? Madman asked. The vice leader nodded. Then I'll tell you. Don't be angry, Madman said. I won't be angry. The vice leader shook his head. I don't believe you. Open the door to the secret room first. Madman pointed at the closed stone door. Why are you so long-winded? The vice leader glared at Madman and waved his hand. The stone door opened and he said, Speak now. In the past, the impression you gave me was that you didn't recognize your family, apathetic and cold, finished. Madman turned around and ran out like a wisp of smoke. The vice leader was stunned. He looked at the empty secret passage outside, and the veins on his forehead couldn't help but pop out. He didn't chase after me? After running for a while, Madman turned around and couldn't help but be stunned. He thought that these words would anger the vice leader, but he didn't expect that there was no movement at all. It seemed that they had completely obtained the vice leader's trust. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed him to be so presumptuous. Wait, I used almost 200 years to complete the law of time. Then wouldn't 300 to 400 years have passed in the black tortoise world? No, I have to hurry out and ask old Chin how his harvest was. But it shouldn't be as great as mine. Madman smiled proudly and ran out. At this moment, Qin Feiyang had already returned to the Devil's Land. Penthouse bedroom. Qin Feiyang and the mermaid princess were entangled for a while, then leaned against the back of the bed and asked, Where's Elder Hua and the Demon Palace Hall Master? The Palace Hall Master left long ago, but Elder Hua stayed behind. The mermaid princess lay in Qin Feiyang's arms, her face flushed red. Why did he stay behind? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Doesn't Elder Hua control the law of time? That's why Sister Fire Lotus begged him to stay. All these years he has been in the cultivation room, guiding Sister Fire Lotus step by step. The mermaid princess smiled. So that's how it is. Hulian, this girl is quite clever. Qin Feiyang chuckled. With Elder Hua's strength and status, who knew how many people in the eastern continent dreamed of getting his guidance, let alone guiding them step by step. That was a great honor. What do you think? After all, Sister Fire Lotus was once the palace master of the Nine Heavens Palace. The mermaid princess rolled her eyes at him. Hee, let's not talk about her. Let's do it again. Qin Feiyang hugged the naked and soft body and crawled into the bed. Buzz. However, at this moment, the divine sound transmission stone in the pocket of the clothes on the bedside table rang. What a bummer. Qin Feiyang crawled out of the bed and took out the divine sound transmission stone. After checking it, he was slightly stunned. Who is it? The mermaid princess popped her head out and asked. Senior brother madman. After saying that, Qin Feiyang sat up and activated the divine sound transmission stone. You should at least put on some clothes, the mermaid princess hurriedly said. I'm a man. What's there to be afraid of? Just wrap yourself in the quilt. Qin Feiyang bared his teeth and smiled. As the divine sound transmission stone was activated, Madman's image suddenly appeared. What the hell? What are you doing? You're not wearing any clothes and lying on the bed? Madman was stunned. What do you think? Qin Feiyang's face darkened. Madman rolled his eyes and said with a smile, I understand. Then, why don't you guys continue first? I'll send you another message later. Get lost. Say it, what's the matter? Qin Feiyang asked. I just want to ask you, have you comprehended the fifth profound of the cause and effect law? Madman said. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. No, you're still in the mood to do that? Madman was speechless. The power of law is very important, but it can't affect the normal life of husband and wife. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and asked, What about you? Have you comprehended the fifth profound of the law of death? I haven't either. Madman shook his head regretfully. It can't be. Qin Feiyang was stunned. I'm just one step away. My head hurts. Madman rubbed his head. Then it's only a matter of time? Qin Feiyang asked. It's hard to say. Anyway, we'll see when the time comes. Madman shook his head and asked, Are you still outside? Yes, at a place called Black Phoenix Mountain. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then come back quickly. I'll go to the Black Tortoise world to ponder. Madman said. One day in the Black Tortoise world was 1,000 years, and only a few hundred years had passed. So, there were still 2 days before the exchange began. In other words, as long as he entered the Black Tortoise world, there are still 2,000 years to comprehend. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and turned off the sound transmission godstone. Why did you lie to him? Mermaid Princess popped her head out and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. I was planning to give him a surprise. Qin Feiyang smirked. You, Mermaid Princess, shook her head and laughed. Okay then, I'll return to the Alliance capital first. Qin Feiyang got up and quickly put on his clothes. He kissed Mermaid Princess on the forehead and turned to leave. As soon as he went out, he saw a person standing in the tea garden, curiously looking at the tea trees around. Elder Hua? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He stepped in front of Elder Hua and asked, When did you come out? A while ago. Elder Hua faintly smiled and asked, Did you cultivate these tea trees? No, it's fire lotus. Qin Feiyang shook his head. So it's this girl. Elder Hua nodded and turned to Qin Feiyang. He smiled and asked, How's your comprehension? Chapter 32:19. Qin Feiyang smiled and released his aura. The aura of a new sovereign was the best proof. Amazing! Elder Hua exclaimed. You're too kind. It's all thanks to the Hall Master's good advice. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Although the Hall Master gave a hint, those with poor comprehension wouldn't be able to understand it. Elder Hua shook his head and smiled. This time, my demon hall has done you a favor. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. Why did it suddenly change to this topic? Since you've done me a favor, shouldn't you repay the favor? Elder Hua's eyes contained a trace of a sinister smile. Ah. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He shook his head and said, If you have something to say, just say it. Give fire lotus to this old man. Elder Hua said. What? Qin Feiyang's body stiffened. He hurriedly said, Elder Hua, I know fire lotus is very beautiful, but the age gap between you two is too big. What are you talking about? Elder Hua's face darkened. He said angrily, This old man wants fire lotus to be my disciple. I see. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly and said apologetically, I'm sorry, it's a misunderstanding. I really don't know what's in your head all the time. Elder Hu rolled his eyes. He then smiled and said, Fire Lotus's comprehension is pretty good. I've only guided her for a short while, but she's already comprehended the fourth profound. The fourth profound? Doesn't that mean she's only one step away from becoming a half-step sovereign? Qin Feiyang nodded. Yes. Elder Hu nodded and smiled. Most importantly, my demon hall hasn't produced anyone who has comprehended the law of time. There's no one to inherit this old man's ability. So you're planning to take Fire Lotus as your disciple and make her your successor? Qin Feiyang asked. Don't talk nonsense. It's not easy to take over this old man's position in the demon hall. Elder Hu shook his head. Then, what is your identity in the Devil Palace? Qin Feiyang was curious. Until now, he only knew that Elder Hu was from the Demon Palace. He didn't know anything else. Guess. Elder Hu smiled mysteriously. Judging from the Hall Master's attitude towards you, he seems to be very courteous. Could it be that you are the Vice Hall Master? Qin Feiyang asked. No. Elder Hu shook his head. No. Qin Feiyang was stunned. I won't beat around the bush with you. This old man is actually the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. Elder Hu smiled. Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. That's right. In the past, this old man was indeed the Vice Hall Master of the Devil Palace. However, I have long since given up my position. Originally, after abdicating, this old man planned to conceal my identity and live a carefree life. However, there was nothing I could do about it. The palace master repeatedly begged me to continue staying in the Demon Palace. Moreover, he even made me the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. However, don't underestimate the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. His authority in the Demon Palace is not inferior to that of the Vice Hall Master. Elder Hu smiled. Then, who is the Vice Hall Master of the Devil Palace now? Qin Feiyang was curious. You've seen him before. Elder Hu smiled. Seen him before? Figures flashed past Qin Feiyang's mind. He had seen Elder Hu, the Hall Master, and Chu Yin before. Could it be Chu Yin? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Yes, this girl, Chu Yin, is also this old man's student. However, this girl has surpassed me. Although her strength is not as good as mine for the time being, her ability is above mine. Moreover, all the devil pavilions in the eastern continent are managed by her. Elder Hu smiled. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and said with a smile, Then I have really underestimated her in the past. Then, what do you think about the Fire Lotus? Elder Hu asked. The Fire Lotus has the right to make her own decisions. Therefore, you have to ask her personally. Qin Feiyang said. But she said that she will listen to you. Elder Hu was helpless. He had already mentioned this to the Fire Lotus face to face, but the Fire Lotus attitude was that if Qin Dage said it was okay, then it was okay. This girl, Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and pondered for a while before saying, It is her fortune to be able to become your disciple. Of course, I will not object. However, she has to stay in the Black Tortoise world. Understood. After all, the Black Tortoise world has a time array that lasts 1,000 years. It will be of great help to her cultivation. Elder Hu nodded. All right then. She will be your disciple. Qin Feiyang smiled. Haha, this old man will go and ask her to become your disciple now. Elder Hu laughed and flew toward the ancient castle. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. This old man was quite interesting. Shua. With a thought, he appeared at the peak of the Black Phoenix Mountain. Then he opened a space-time gate and descended outside the Azure Wave Snow Mountain. Then he flew toward the Azure Wave Snow Mountain. Very soon, he returned to the Hall of Fame. Frenzy was already waiting in the cave. Qin Feiyang also deliberately suppressed his cultivation. He was still a half-step ruler. Let me tell you a piece of good news. Frenzy chuckled. I also have a piece of good news to tell you. Qin Feiyong smiled. Then you go first. Frenzy said. You go first. Qin Feiyong sat beside the tea table and looked at Frenzy. Frenzy sat opposite Qin Feiyong and said, Vice Alliance leader, they forbid us from participating in the exchange. This is also considered good news? Qin Feiyong was stunned. Of course. If they forbid us from going, then can't we reveal our true identities and participate as core disciples of the Devil Palace? Frenzy said, That's true. Qin Feiyong nodded. If the Vice Alliance leader also allowed them to participate in the exchange, then they wouldn't be able to participate as core disciples of the Devil Palace. Although our identities might still be exposed in the end, it's best to delay it as much as possible. At that time, we will seal the cave and announce to the outside world that we are in seclusion. In fact, we will secretly leave the Azure Wave Snow Mountain and head to the Heavenly Cloud Sea. Frenzy smiled. Qin Feiyong nodded. Then what's your good news? Frenzy asked. Elder who wants to accept Fire Lotus as his disciple. Qin Feiyong smiled. What? Frenzy was stunned. And he also said that he wants Fire Lotus to be his successor. Qin Feiyong chuckled. This is a good thing. Elder whose strength is unfathomable. The most important thing is that he also grasps the law of time. If Fire Lotus becomes his disciple, then he can teach her step by step. Frenzy said, He has already taught Fire Lotus step by step in the Black Tortoise world. Now, Fire Lotus has already comprehended the fourth, profound of the law of time. Qin Feiyong smiled. Amazing. However, you can't let Elder Hu bring Fire Lotus to the Demon Palace. Frenzy said, Of course. Qin Feiyong nodded. Since it's an apprenticeship, then is there a gift? Frenzy asked. I'm not sure about that. This is their own business. Qin Feiyong shook his head. Are you stupid? The Demon Palace is so much stronger than the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Their resources are definitely better than the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. The Rogue Cultivator Alliance doesn't have many supreme treasures, but the Demon Palace definitely has a lot. Not to mention others, they definitely have more than the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Such a good opportunity. Why don't you personally go and let Fire Lotus take the opportunity to get a few? Frenzy stared at Qin Feiyong as if he expected better from Qin Feiyong. What was going on in his head? The opportunity was right in front of him, but he didn't grasp it. Enough. If Elder Hu really wants to nurture Fire Lotus, even if others don't remind him, he will give Fire Lotus some divine items to protect himself. Qin Feiyong shook his head. Not everyone thinks the way you do. Frenzy pursed his lips and asked, Then is Elder Hu still in the Black Tortoise world? Qin Feiyong nodded. Quickly send me in. I'll go take a look. Frenzy urged. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but laugh. With a wave of his hand, he sent Frenzy to the Black Tortoise world and then lowered his head to ponder. Bloodhall used the lives of the Sword Emperor and the other 3 to threaten him. When the exchange begins, would Bloodhall also bring the Sword Emperor and the other 3? If he really brought them along, he might be able to find an opportunity to save them. However, Bloodhall shouldn't be so stupid. Even if they brought them, they should only bring the Sword Emperor. Because the portrait that appeared in the major cities of the Eastern continent was the Sword Emperor. In other words, at that time, even if he saved the Sword Emperor, he would have to think of another way to save the Mermaid Emperor and the other 2. Exchange conference. Bloodhall, you guys tried every means to kill me, but I won't let you guys do as you wish. Just wait and see. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed coldly as he prepared to enter the Black Tortoise world. Brother Qin. Suddenly, Yi Tian's voice sounded from outside. Qin Feiyong was taken aback. With a wave of his hand, the law of thunder on the door dissipated. Yi Tian strode in, but seemed to have something on his mind. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang stood up to welcome him. Have you heard about the exchange conference? Yi Tian asked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then did my grandfather let you guys participate? Yi Tian asked. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. I didn't either, but it would be a pity to miss this kind of peak showdown of the younger generation, especially all the monsters of the 4 continents. Yi Tian sighed. Master is also thinking about us. Qin Feiyang laughed. Grandpa must have good intentions, but even if you don't participate, you can still bring us along to join in the fun. Yi Tian looked unhappy. You're not thinking of sneaking there, are you? Qin Feiyang was stunned. I have this intention. How about it? Do you want to go together? This kind of peak showdown is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yi Tian looked at Qin Feiyang temptingly. It's not good to do this. Qin Feiyang hesitated. What's not good about it? When Grandpa blames me, I will bear the responsibility. Yi Tian said heroically. I still think it's inappropriate. The heavenly cloud sea is so dangerous. If we sneak there, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be any accidents. Brother Yi, I know what you're thinking. As the #1 monster in the Hall of Fame, you definitely won't be willing to hide in the Alliance capital. However, Master is right. We still need time to grow. There's still a long way to go. There will be opportunities in the future. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Yi Tian sighed and shook his head. I knew you would say that. All right. Just treat it as if I've never been here. After saying that, Yi Tian turned around and left. Space-time law. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Tian's back. This person's current strength was indeed a lot worse than those older disciples, but his future achievements would definitely be higher than those people. He only hoped that they would not become enemies in the future. Chapter 32:20. In the blink of an eye, the morning of the 3rd day. Boom! 3 powerful auras suddenly descended above the hall of the exalted. Qin Feiyang, Madman, Zhao Shaojin, Yi Tian, the woman in green, and the other hall of the exalted disciples walked out of the cave. The vice leader, Great Elder, and the Hall of Famers stood side by side in the sky, their faces extremely solemn. They are going to the Sky Cloud Sea. I wonder who is going to participate in the exchange conference this time. Do you think Mo Wuyuan and Mo Wuhui will go? They should. After all, their talents are so good. In this exchange conference, the 4 superpowers of the Sky Cloud realm will all be present. How can they miss such an opportunity to make a name for themselves? Everyone whispered. Disciples who are going to participate in the exchange conference, gather immediately. The Great Elder spoke. His voice was like a bell, resounding in all directions. Whoosh! Immediately, figures rushed out from the mountains and landed in front of the 3 giants. There were a total of 50 people. There were men and women, fat and thin. All of them looked young. Without exception, each of them stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. Outstanding. Moreover, they all exuded an extremely strong aura. It's them. They are all geniuses in our Hall of the Exalted. It's almost impossible to see them appear usually. Many disciples suddenly had a fanatical look in their eyes, but at the same time, there were also doubts. Who are they? Are they qualified to participate in the exchange conference? Don't embarrass our rogue cultivator alliance. The owner of this questioning voice was none other than Madman. Hearing this voice, Yi Tian and the woman in green couldn't help but look at him in astonishment. What? Did I say something wrong? Madman said lightly. What do you know? Don't think that just because you have a little talent, you have the qualification to look down on others. Let me tell you, in front of them, you are nothing. The woman in green despised. Even if I am nothing, I am still stronger than you. Madman picked his nose. You, the woman in green, suddenly glared at him. You are really enemies, quarreling when you meet. Yi Tian shook his head and smiled bitterly. Who is his enemy? The green-clothed woman's face was filled with disdain. You're right. I feel ashamed to be your enemy. Madman nodded. Bastard, I'll kill you. The green-clothed woman immediately pounced at Madman. She gritted her teeth as if she wanted nothing more than to cut Madman into pieces. All right, stop messing around. Yi Tian stopped the two of them. He looked at Madman and said, Brother Wu Hui, this time I'm on Dan Dan's side. These people can't be underestimated. Look at the young man standing in the second row. The madman glanced at the green-clothed woman and looked in the direction Yi Tian was pointing. There was indeed a young man who was about 8 feet tall. He looked like a small giant, and his entire body emitted an explosive wild aura. This person is called Wang Kuang. I heard that when he first reached the imperishable realm, he comprehended the law of strength and the law of war. At that time, he was called a monster that only appears once every 10,000 years. And the woman in white in the third row, her name is Little Sister Sue. She also comprehended the law of water and the law of ice when she just entered the imperishable realm. Back then, she was praised as a rare genius girl. In short, among these people, none of them are ordinary. Yi Tian said in a low voice, Just reached the imperishable realm? Is that very impressive? Madman asked. Yi Tian was stunned. Then tell me, when did you comprehend the law of strength? The green-clothed woman looked at Madman. Why did he look so arrogant? Me. Madman was stunned and snorted. I'm afraid I'll scare you to death if I tell you. Then tell me. Let's see if you can scare me to death. The green-clothed woman sneered. Zhao Shaojin and Yi Tian also looked at Madman curiously. Madman smiled proudly and said, When I first comprehended the law of slaughter, I was only at the monarch god level. What? Monarch god level? The three of them were dazed. A monarch god already comprehended the law of strength? This was too perverted. Don't try to fool us. Do you think we're stupid? The green-clothed woman came back to her senses and stared at Madman angrily. If you don't believe me, ask my brother. Madman pointed at Qin Feiyang. Is this true? Yi Tian looked at Qin Feiyang. There's no need for him to lie about this. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Yi Tian sucked in a breath of cold air. He was indeed abnormal. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Then what about you? When did you comprehend the first law of strength? Me. Qin Feiyang thought for a moment and said with a smile, The first law of strength I comprehended was the law of light. At that time, my cultivation base seemed to be at the paragon god level. As for which realm it was, it's been so long that I forgot. The three of them looked at each other. One comprehended the law of slaughter at the monarch god level, and the other comprehended the law of light at the paragon god level. These two brothers, what kind of monsters were they? Madman's words were a bit unreliable, but since it came from Qin Feiyang's mouth, it was definitely not false. This was really like the old saying, comparisons are odious. At the same time, in the sky. Are you all ready? The Vice Alliance master swept his gaze over the 50 people standing in front of them, a sharp glint in his eyes. We're ready. The 50 people spoke, their voices like thunder, and their bodies emitted a shocking sharpness. Very good. This exchange is an opportunity for our wandering Cultivator Alliance to rise. We must do our best. The vice leader shouted. Yes, the 50 people spoke in unison, their voices sonorous and powerful, and there was a sense of determination between their brows. Then let's go. Following the vice leader's order, the group immediately flew out of the Hall of Fame under the lead of the Grand Elder and disappeared at the end of the glacier. Whoosh! The vice leader and the Hall of Famers landed in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Master, Grandpa. They all bowed. The vice leader looked at Yi Tian, Qin Feiyang and Madman and sighed. I know you're unwilling, but Old Man Qi and I are doing this for your own good. You still can't compete with the core disciples of the four superpowers. That's right. The future is long. There will be opportunities for you to show your strength in the future. The Hall of Famers nodded in agreement. We understand. Qin Feiyang nodded. All right then. Don't run around while we're away. Cultivate well. The vice leader reminded them, and then looked at the Hall of Famers. Then they soared into the sky and flew away like lightning. They're all gone. Who will be in charge of the Wandering Cultivator Alliance's affairs in the future? Madman was suspicious. Aren't the other 8 elders still here? Yi Tian shook his head. Brother Yi, I have a question. Are there only 50 lesser sovereigns in the Hall of Fame? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Of course not. There are at least 800 lesser sovereigns in the Hall of Fame. However, the others can't compare to these 50 people, because these 50 people have already comprehended the 4th profound of the 4th law. Yi Tian said. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. Comprehending the 5th profound of 3 laws meant that they were lesser sovereigns, and comprehending the 5th profound of 4 laws meant that they were greater sovereigns. Now, these 50 people had already comprehended the 4th profound of 4 laws. They were only one step away from becoming greater sovereigns. Indeed, they were the strongest among the disciples. All right, this is not something we should be concerned about. Go back and cultivate. By the way, Dandan, come here for a while. I have something to tell you. Yi Tian shook his head and returned to his cave. All right. The green-clothed woman responded. Then she glared at Madman and ran into Yi Tian's cave. So even they didn't have the chance to participate. There's nothing we can do about it. Although they're talented, they're not strong enough. That's true. With their cultivation, they'll only be abused if they go to the conference. Wait, did you forget about the other 2? Who? Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo. That's right. After they seized the Zhao clan's crystal vein and soul vein, they seemed as if they'd vanished into thin air and never showed themselves again. This time, all the geniuses of the Skycloud realm are gathering at the Skycloud Ocean. I wonder if they'll join in the fun. I don't think so. Although the 2 of them have sovereign weapons, their strength is still far from enough. That might not be the case. If they really go to the Skycloud Ocean, then the conference will definitely be very lively. Everyone was discussing. Hearing these discussions, Zhao Shaojin held back his laughter and said via voice transmission, if they were to find out that the 2 of you are Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo, I wonder what expressions they would make. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Qin Dage, Big Brother Mo, are you really not going? Zhao Shaojin asked. Take a guess. Madman smiled mysteriously. Ah. Zhao Shaojin was stunned. Looking at Madman's eyes, he knew that he definitely wouldn't miss such a good thing. Wait a minute. This doesn't seem to be a good thing. Qin Feiyang thought. I think not only me and senior brother Madman, but your big brother Yi Tian might also sneak over to join in the fun. What? Zhao Shaojin couldn't help but turn to look at cave abode number 1. How about it? Do you want to go too? Madman chuckled. Me. Zhao Shaojin was stunned and asked, Can I? No. Before Madman could speak, Qin Feiyang shook his head. Why not? It's good to go and join in the fun, Madman said. Don't forget our purpose for going. If our identities are really exposed in the end, Shaojin will be implicated if she follows us. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. That's true. Madman nodded. All right then, I won't go. You guys must be careful. Zhao Shaojin warned. She still had self-awareness. Although she didn't know the real purpose of Qin Feiyang and Madman's trip, she knew that it must be something dangerous. If she insisted on going, she would only be a burden to the 2 of them. Cultivate well. Don't let your father down. If our identities are really exposed, you have to immediately cut ties with us and even have the chance to kill us in public. Only in this way can you remove the suspicion. Qin Feiyang secretly reminded. I understand. Zhao Xiaojin nodded. In addition, you must not let others know about the potential mark on your body. Otherwise, it will bring you a fatal disaster. Qin Feiyang said. Don't worry, I know what to do. Zhao Xiaojin smiled. All right then. Qin Feiyang smiled and led Madman back to the cave abode. Sigh. Zhao Xiaojin glanced at Qin Feiyang and Madman's cave abode and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. She wondered if this was the last time they would meet. Then, she returned to the cave abode. Chapter 32-21 Black Tortoise World. Qin Feiyang found Elder Hua. Elder Hua said, I've already contacted Chu Yin. We'll meet at the coast of Heavenly Cloud Ocean. Okay, I'll go out and think of a way to leave Azure Wave Snow Mountain. Qin Feiyang left Black Tortoise World alone and stood in his cave dwelling. Should he bring Black Dragon and Fire Luan along? Black Dragon and Fire Luan were both perfect sovereigns. If he brought them along, they would definitely be of great help. However, he was worried that his identity would be exposed and they would turn against him. There was also the Fire Dragon. If it knew that he was going to the exchange, it would definitely shamelessly follow him. Black Dragon and Fire Luan were fine. But if something happened to the Fire Dragon, how would he explain it to the Alliance Master and Fire Dragon's parents? They might even find him to settle the score. Forget it. I'm not bringing either. Qin Feiyang shook his head and walked out of the cave dwelling. Seeing that there was no one around, he activated the law of lightning and sealed the cave dwelling. Then he prepared to activate the concealment technique and leave. I knew you wouldn't stay in the cave dwelling obediently. Suddenly, a sneaky laugh sounded behind him. Qin Feiyang's body stiffened. This voice belonged to Black Dragon. He turned around and saw Black Dragon, Fire Luan, and Fire Dragon squatting at the entrance of cave dwelling number 4, looking at him with shifty eyes. What are you doing squatting there? Qin Feiyang looked at the three beasts suspiciously. What do you think? Black Dragon asked. How would I know? Qin Feiyang laughed. Still playing dumb? Brother, if you want to go to the exchange, just say it. We're not outsiders. Is there a need to hide it from us? Black Dragon walked out, his eyes full of disdain. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm just bored and want to go out for a walk. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Is that so? It just so happens that we're bored. Why don't we go out for a walk? Black Dragon looked at him playfully. The Fire Luan and Fire Dragon were the same. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. It seemed that it would not be easy to get rid of these three fellows. Look, a female dragon. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and pointed behind the three beasts. Female dragon? The Fire Dragon immediately looked behind him, but it was empty. However, the Black Dragon and the Fire Luan remained indifferent, as if they had already seen through Qin Feiyang's little trick. No, the Fire Dragon glanced at the void, then turned back to look at Qin Feiyang. Are you stupid? You actually believed it. He's obviously trying to distract us so that he can slip away. The Black Dragon looked at it with disdain. Ugh, the Fire Dragon was astonished. He looked at Qin Feiyang with a dark face and said angrily, You bastard, you're too dishonest. What do you want? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. The Fire Dragon was easy to fool, but the Black Dragon and the Fire Luan were two wily old foxes. It was impossible to fool them. Nothing, we're just going out for a stroll. After all, you'll be lonely if you go out alone, right? The Black Dragon looked at him mockingly. I don't feel lonely. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Believe me, as time goes by, you'll definitely feel lonely. The Black Dragon chuckled. Fine, follow me if you want. Qin Feiyang's face was dark as he turned around and flew outside. The three beasts looked at each other and laughed sinisterly. They followed Qin Feiyang unhurriedly. He wanted to test his patience with these three fellows, but no matter what, the three beasts kept following him. They even talked and laughed as if they were out to relax. Why is it so troublesome? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang, you didn't even leave the alliance? Little Yin is urging you. Elder Hu's voice suddenly sounded. Qin Feiyang sighed, stopped and looked at the three beasts. What are you doing? The three beasts looked at him suspiciously. Fine, we'll go to the border together, but we have to make a deal. Qin Feiyang said. See, you finally can't hold it in anymore. You're really naive to want to test our patience. The black dragon smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. Cut the crap. How about we make a deal? Say it. The black dragon said. First, all of you have to listen to me. Second, without my permission, all of you have to stay in my space god item and can't run around. Third, no matter what happens in the future, you're not allowed to attack me. Qin Feiyang said. The first and third are no problem, but for the second, you want us to stay in your space god item. What's the difference between that and being locked up in the Hall of the Exalted? The black dragon frowned. So, do you agree or not? Qin Feiyang asked. No. The three beasts shook their heads. They were just there to join in the fun. What was the point of staying in the space god item? If you don't agree, don't follow me. Qin Feiyang said angrily. We don't agree, but we have to follow you. If you're so capable, you can chase us away by force. The black dragon looked at him provocatively. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. How could a divine dragon act like a hooligan? He pondered for a while. Qin Feiyang said telepathically, Elder Hua, I've run into some trouble. Why don't you let Chuyin bring some people to Sky Cloud Island first? What trouble? Elder Hua was suspicious. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. So that's the case. How about this? Leave the Itinerant Cultivators Alliance first. Find a place where there's no one and have a showdown with them. If they dare to do anything to you, I'll kill them directly. Elder Hua said telepathically. Kill them? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. Otherwise, if you keep them by your side, they'll become a disaster sooner or later. Elder Hua said. Are you confident? Qin Feiyang asked secretly. Of course. They haven't comprehended the strongest law, let alone the supreme profound. It's easy for me to kill them. Elder Hua said proudly. Okay then. Qin Feiyang agreed, secretly. This was a good way to solve the problem once and for all. With Elder Hua's help, he could abandon all his worries. If the soft approach didn't work, then he would use the hard approach. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly as he looked at the three beasts and said, Let's leave the Kanglin Snow Mountain first. Okay. The black dragon nodded. Whoosh! Immediately, one man and three beasts rushed towards the border. When Zhang Deyuan saw Qin Feiyang and the three beasts, he couldn't help but be stunned and asked, Don't tell me you guys want to sneak to Sky Cloud Ocean too. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang and the three beasts were taken aback. They wanted to sneak there too? Could it be that someone was one step ahead of them? Zhang Deyuan said. Young Master Yi Tian and the Great Elder's granddaughter just left. As expected, Qin Feiyang muttered. However, this person's speed was quite fast. He was actually ahead of him. All right, I know that I can't persuade you guys. Be careful. Zhang Deyuan directly took out the token and opened the barrier. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and led the three beasts out, but suddenly turned to look at Zhang Deyuan and said, There is something you must remember. Zhang Deyuan looked at him suspiciously. If anything happens in the future, you must remember to cut ties with me immediately. Qin Feiyang said. What do you mean? Zhang Deyuan was a little confused. You will understand in the future. Qin Feiyang smiled and then said, Of course, you can escape from the Rogue Cultivators Alliance immediately and come to me. After saying that, he left with the three beasts without looking back. Escape from the Rogue Cultivators Alliance? Zhang Deyuan was stunned. What the hell is this? Outside the glacier, in a desolate mountain, Qin Feiyang and the three beasts landed in a valley. Why did you stop here? The three beasts were suspicious. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the three beasts in silence. The three beasts looked at each other with a puzzled look. I think there are some things that I have to tell you guys. Qin Feiyang smiled. What is it? The three beasts were curious. My identity. Qin Feiyang took it and took out a facial restoration pill. This is a facial restoration pill. The Black Dragon and Fire Yuan were stunned. Could it be the same thought appeared in their minds at the same time? Could it be that the person in front of them didn't have his real face? Qin Feiyang took the facial restoration pill and quickly restored his true appearance. You are... The two beasts' eyes suddenly trembled as they stared at Qin Feiyang. The fire dragon's expression was very calm. Because when they were in the trial ground, Qin Feiyang had already confessed to it. Therefore, it had long known Qin Feiyang's true identity. Don't overreact. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Qin Feiyang, the black dragon murmured, looked at Qin Feiyang and suddenly said angrily, Bastard, you killed Mo-Yun-Yun. I killed Mo-Yun-Yun? Qin Feiyang was stunned. You dare to kill my brother. I will destroy you. The Fire Yuan was even more irritable. When it came back to its senses, it erupted with a terrifying aura and directly pounced at Qin Feiyang. Wait. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand and said, Your reaction is a bit too surprising. Let me think about it first. Why did the Black Dragon and Fire Yuan have such a reaction after seeing his true appearance? Wait, could it be that these two guys thought he killed Mo-Yun-Yun and then disguised themselves as him to infiltrate the Rogue Cultivators Alliance? What's there to think about? Tell me the truth. When did you kill Brother Mo? Let me tell you, even if you have a Dominator's divine weapon, I will avenge Brother Mo. The Black Dragon's eyes flashed fiercely. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Then a sly look flashed in his eyes and asked, Even if you die, you will avenge Mo-Yun-Yun. That's right. He saved my life. The Black Dragon nodded. How loyal, Qin Feiyang muttered. Hearing this, he was quite touched. Don't talk nonsense with me. Where is Mo-Yun-Yun's body? The Black Dragon shouted. What are you thinking about? Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and said, I didn't kill Mo-Yun-Yun because I am Mo-Yun-Yun and Mo-Yun-Yun is me. Do you understand? What do you mean? The two beasts frowned, unable to understand. They couldn't be blamed because this was too sudden. Although they were shouting to kill, they were actually very nervous. After all, everyone knew that this person had a Dominator's divine weapon, so they were a little slow. Chapter 32:22. Don't you understand? Qin Feiyang pointed at himself and said, I am Mo-Yun-Yun, the real Mo-Yun-Yun. Aren't you Qin Feiyang? How can you be Mo-Yun-Yun? The two beasts were suspicious. Oh my God! Qin Feiyang looked at the sky speechlessly and said, Mo-Yun-Yun is just an identity that I used to enter the alliance. Let's put it this way. Mo-Yun-Yun and I are the same person. Do you understand? The same person? You mean, from the beginning, Mo-Yun-Yun was you. Huoluan was suspicious. That's right. Qin Feiyang nodded. He had finally turned the corner. Where's the evidence? Black Dragon immediately questioned again. That's right. Just because you say so. I can also say that I am Mo-Yun-Yun. Do you believe me? You have to show me the evidence. Hua Wan also nodded. Qin Feiyang was a little helpless and asked, "What evidence do you want?" The two of them thought for a while and said in unison, "The power of law." The appearance could be changed, but the power of law could not be changed. As long as they showed the power of law, they would be able to tell if Qin Feiyang and Mo Yuanyuan were the same person. All right, Qin Feiyang was helpless. With a wave of his hand, the power of the 7 laws appeared. The law of light, the law of force, the law of war, the law of wind, the law of massacre, the law of light, and the law of cause and effect. Black Dragon and Huan looked at them one by one. The more they looked, the more shocked they were. Whoosh! In the end, the two beasts looked at Qin Feiyang in unison. "So you are really Qin Feiyang? And Mo Yuanyuan?" Black Dragon asked. "That's right." Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "And Mo Wuhui is also the madman Mo that you all know." "Madman Mo?" Black Dragon was slightly stunned. "That's right." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Damn, you two really have guts. You actually dared to infiltrate the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and even become the Vice Alliance leader and the personal disciple of the Hall of Famers?" The Black Dragon was stunned. All these years, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance had been searching for the two of them everywhere. However, they never expected that the two of them had already infiltrated the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and stayed by everyone's side. "Now that you know who I am, it's time for you to make a statement," Qin Feiyang said. "Take a stand?" The Black Dragon and Fire Yuan stared blankly. What kind of attitude was that? "Stand. Are we still friends like before, or are we still enemies in the future?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Listen to what you're saying. As long as you are Mo Fengyuan, then we are still friends." The Black Dragon immediately spoke, looking at Qin Feiyang with displeasure. "Then you've never thought of dealing with me?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Why would I want to deal with you? You're my brother and my benefactor. Why would I want to deal with you? Do you think I have nothing better to do? Besides, I don't have any direct relationship with the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Why would I help them deal with you?" The Black Dragon said, "That's right. We only recognize you as a person. Everything else has nothing to do with us." Fire Yuan also said, "Thank you." Qin Feiyang breathed a sigh of relief. His eyes were filled with gratitude. He had thought too much before. There was no falling out at all. This was because the attitude of a beast was like this. As long as they recognized you as a friend, they would never change their attitude for the rest of their life. As for this guy, the Black Dragon and Fire Yuan looked at the Fire Dragon. Their eyes flashed with killing intent. "What are you guys trying to do?" "Let me tell you, bullying with numbers is the behavior of a villain." The Fire Dragon immediately began to retreat. His eyes were filled with vigilance. "Then let's have a one-on-one battle. You can choose between me and Brother Fire Yuan. You can't say that we're bullying with numbers." The Black Dragon chuckled. The Fire Dragon's face turned black. Both of them were perfect realm sovereigns. Wouldn't it be the same no matter who he chose? Qin Feiyang looked at the Fire Dragon with amusement. He stopped the Black Dragon and Fire Yuan and said with a smile, "You already know my identity, but you've kept it a secret for me. I think you can still be trusted. How about this? Let's cooperate." "Cooperate?" The Fire Dragon was stunned. "That's right. I sneaked into the Rogue Cultivator Alliance for only one purpose. That is to investigate the reason why the Vice Alliance leader wanted to kill me." Qin Feiyang nodded. "This matter. I heard that the Vice Alliance leader ordered to kill you because of a person called Wang Hui?" The Black Dragon asked. "On the surface, that's the case. But what about the real situation? Do you really believe that he would sacrifice his grandson's reputation to kill me for a small Wang Hui?" Qin Feiyang said. "You mean there's another reason behind this?" The Black Dragon asked. "That's right. Furthermore, I've already investigated it. Qin Feiyang took out the divine sound transmission stone. With a wave of his hand, a video slowly unfolded in the void. It was the conversation between the Vice Alliance leader and the black-robed man that he had recorded. What? He actually colluded with the Blood Hall. The fire dragon's body shook violently. His eyes were filled with disbelief. If he didn't see the evidence with his own eyes, he wouldn't dare to believe it. The Black Dragon and Fire Luan were also shocked. This was truly a piece of explosive news. Furthermore, I suspect that the Alliance leader and your father's disappearance should be related to him. Therefore, we can cooperate. My intention is also good. I've helped the Rogue Cultivator Alliance uncover such a big spy, Qin Feiyang said. I originally thought that someone was colluding with the Demon Palace, but I didn't expect him to be colluding with the Blood Hall. Outrageous. I'm going to announce his crimes. The fire dragon roared. Don't. Qin Feiyang hurriedly stopped Huolong. He shook his head and said, if the Alliance Master and your parents are still alive, then if you were to announce his crimes now, he would definitely be driven to desperation and die together with the Alliance Master and your parents. This wouldn't benefit us at all. Then what do you think we should do? The fire dragon frowned. First, we have to find out whether your parents and the Alliance leader are alive or not, and whether they are controlled by him. Only then can we make the next step of the plan. Qin Feiyang said. The fire dragon pondered for a moment and nodded. All right, we'll cooperate. If it's really related to him, I'll skin him alive. That's a wise move. Qin Feiyang smiled. The fire dragon glanced at him indifferently and said, what about Yi Tian? I can conclude that Yi Tian has nothing to do with this. Qin Feiyang said. That's good. I'm quite satisfied with Yi Tian. If he's also involved, then I'll feel bad. The fire dragon sighed. Then you should have a purpose for going to the exchange, right? The black dragon looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Yes, you should have heard about the portraits that appeared in the major cities of the Eastern continent 3 days ago, right? Qin Feiyang said. Yes. At that time, we were discussing why these inexplicable portraits would appear. The black dragon nodded. To be honest, the person in the portrait is my friend, and all of this is controlled by the Blood Hall. They did this to force me to participate in the exchange. If I don't go, this friend of mine will die in their hands. Qin Feiyang said. Then, what identity are you going with now? Huolwan asked. The Blood Hall wants my and Senior Brother Frenzy's lives. Of course, we have to go with our real identities. I didn't want to bring you guys along because I didn't want you to know my identity. But I didn't expect you guys to pester me and not let go. That's why I told you guys the truth. Qin Feiyang was helpless. Then, if we didn't shamelessly follow you, would you still keep hiding it from us? The black dragon frowned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. All right, as expected. You didn't treat us as brothers. I'm so sad. Brother Huolwan, let's go. The black dragon turned around and left with a sad face. Enough. You don't have the talent to act. Qin Feiyang was speechless. The black dragon grinned. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, now, I'm going to participate in the exchange as a core disciple of the Devil Hall. So, we have to meet up with the people of the Devil Hall later. Are you really a disciple of the Devil Hall? Fire Dragon frowned. I wasn't in the past, but now I am. This is also the deal that I discussed with Elder Hua and the Devil Hall Master. They will help me deal with the Blood Hall, and I will become a disciple of the Devil Hall. Qin Feiyang smiled. So that's how it is. Fire Dragon nodded and said with a frown, then, were you the one who planned to execute me? Yes, because I wanted to know the Alliance leader's whereabouts from you. I used this method to gain your trust. Qin Feiyang didn't hide anything. Despicable. Fire Dragon snorted. There's a problem with your words. Who am I doing this for? Isn't it to find out whether the alliance leader and your parents are alive? Qin Feiyang looked at it with dissatisfaction. All right. Fire Dragon nodded and looked at Qin Feiyang. Then, I wish us a happy cooperation. Qin Feiyang smiled and called Madman and Elder Hu out. Damn, you were actually hiding in his spatial divine item. Fire Dragon's pupils shrank when he saw Elder Hua. That's right. If you don't cooperate with Qin Feiyang, this old man will directly kill you. Elder Hua nodded. Bullying the weak. What kind of big shot are you? Fire Dragon grumbled with dissatisfaction. Madman also returned to his original appearance. He glanced at the three beasts and said, You guys are too conspicuous. Change yourselves too. The three beasts looked at each other and didn't object. Fire Yuan turned into a black crow, while Fire Dragon and Black Dragon turned into a red snake and a black snake, respectively. Then let's go. Qin Feiyang glanced at the three beasts and then at Elder Hua. Elder Hua waved his hand and opened the altar. Then he led Qin Feiyang and the three beasts towards the heavenly cloud ocean. Chapter 32-23. The Heavenly Cloud Sea. This place had different statuses in the eyes of different people. For example, the four superforces and the various giants of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance all regarded the Heavenly Cloud Sea as the biggest forbidden area. The reason was that there was a beast god here, because this beast god was so powerful that even they were afraid of it. No one dared to cause trouble here. If there was nothing important, they would never step into the Heavenly Cloud Sea. But in the eyes of ordinary people, this was a relatively dangerous sea. If they had nothing to do, they would go in to explore and search for treasures. Although it was life-threatening, it was also a great fortune. So, the Heavenly Cloud Sea was a place that even the overlords feared, but it was also a place that ordinary people often went to. The coast, the sea wind whistled, rolling up huge waves that covered the sky. The crashing sound was deafening. Somewhere, about 100 people gathered in the void. The leader was a young and beautiful woman. She was tall and exquisite, wearing a snow-white dress. She was like a fairy from a painting, causing the world here to lose its color because of her. Behind the woman, many young men were looking at her back with admiration in their eyes. This woman was the deputy hall master of the Demon Palace, Chu Yin. This was a woman who had beauty, strength, ability, and means. She was all in one. She could be a femme fatale, but she could also be a demon king that countless people feared. Behind Chu Yin, there were all kinds of young men and women. Among them, there were more men and fewer women. Each of them had an outstanding temperament and emitted a powerful aura, and they were the core disciples representing the Demon Palace to participate in the exchange conference. Miss Yin, why isn't Elder Hua here yet? We've been waiting for half a day. Did something happen to Elder Hua? Seeing that Elder Hua hadn't arrived yet, some disciples couldn't help but worry. Don't you know Elder Hua's strength? Even I'm not his match. How could there be an accident? He went to look for Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo. Chu Yin said indifferently. Are Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo really disciples of our Demon Palace? We've never seen them in the Demon Palace. A young woman looked at Chu Yun suspiciously. Yes, they are indeed disciples of our Devil Palace, but they were hidden by Elder Hua, so no one knows where they are. Chu Yin shook his head. I see. I heard that Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo seem to have comprehended a few types of law powers, but they don't seem to be very strong. I've heard of them as well. I don't think there's anything special about them other than their dominator weapons. Why does Elder Hua value it so much? Everyone discussed in low voices. Their faces were filled with doubt and a hint of dissatisfaction. As people who could participate in the exchange, they were naturally the most outstanding core disciples of the Devil Halls. They had all heard of the deeds of Qin Feiyang and the Madman, but they felt that they didn't live up to their reputation. Because if it were them, if they also had Dominator divine weapons, their abilities and methods would definitely be more outstanding than Qin Feiyang and the madman. Chu Yun ignored him. These people were all favored by the heavens and were born with an arrogant temperament. They never knew that there was always someone better than them in this world. Perhaps when Qin Feiyang and the madman came, they could be taught a lesson. Shua! Suddenly, 3 figures descended in the void not far away. It's Elder Hua. A group of core disciples immediately went up to welcome him. Sorry to keep you waiting. Elder Hua chuckled. No. Everyone waved their hands and then looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman. Similarly, the madman and Qin Feiyang were also sizing up these people. There were about 100 of them. The men had extraordinary temperaments, and the women were intelligent. All of them had reached the early stage Dominator realm. Unfortunately, almost everyone's face was filled with arrogance. How are the core disciples of our Devil Palace? Elder Hua asked with a smile. They still need to be polished. The madman grinned. Senior brother, what are you talking about? Qin Feiyang immediately stared at the madman. How could such words be said in public? With a single glance, one could tell that these people were a group of arrogant people. If such words were said, it would definitely cause them to be dissatisfied. As expected, hearing the madman's words, the group of core disciples instantly opened their eyes wide in anger. Can't I speak the truth? The madman looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang. Don't cause trouble. Qin Feiyang glared at him. All right. The madman helplessly nodded his head. He then seriously sized up these core disciples and cupped his hands. This, everyone, just now I spoke the truth without thinking. It's my fault. I apologize. I sincerely apologize to all of you. Actually, it's not an exaggeration to say that all of you are dragons and phoenixes that only appear once in 100 years. When a small character like me stands together with all of you, I can only look up to all of you. Sorry. Next time when I speak the truth, I will definitely think about it. The madman repeatedly apologized, appearing very sincere. However, Qin Feiyang's face became darker and darker. Chu Yin and Elder Hua's mouths were also twitching. As for the group of core disciples, many of them were already on the verge of exploding in anger. All of them were gnashing their teeth. Speak the truth? This was called an apology? He was clearly mocking them even more. Madman M.O., what are you being arrogant for? You're just a half-step dominator now. Someone spoke. The meaning was self-evident. You're just a half-step dominator. What right do you have to evaluate us geniuses? Yes. Sorry. I've really offended you. You're all magnanimous. Don't bicker with a country bumpkin like me. The madman continuously apologized with a fawning expression. However, the ridicule in his eyes was not concealed at all. What the hell? Isn't he just a core disciple of the Demon Palace? He had the right to be arrogant in front of others. But in front of him, he was nothing. Geniuses, can you be more shameless? All right, it's almost noon. The Sky Palace, Deity Palace, Blood Palace, and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance should have arrived. Let's go. Chu Yun spoke. If this continued, there would be a fire in the backyard before the exchange even started. After speaking, she waved her hand and a space-time crack opened. She took the lead and walked in. Humph. Let's wait and see. I want to see what you're capable of at the exchange. A young man coldly glanced at the madman and Qin Feiyang before turning around and walking into the space-time crack. The others did the same. Before entering the space-time crack, they all glared at the madman and Qin Feiyang. See, this is the trouble you've caused. Qin Feiyang was helpless. He was just a fish in the moat that was implicated. He didn't even say a word, and he was already hated. Trouble? It doesn't exist. It's just a bunch of small fries who think they're all right. The madman's face was filled with disdain. Small fries? The corner of Elder Hua's mouth twitched as he coughed dryly. Kid, I'm still here. Can you consider my feelings? After all, they were the core disciples that they had carefully selected. Now, this kid actually said that they were a bunch of small fries. Wasn't this deliberately slapping his face? Is it true that you can't speak the truth? The madman frowned. All right. You're amazing. Back then, they didn't even need to show up. Just the two of you swept the core disciples of the Sky Hall, God Hall, and Blood Hall. Now, Elder Hua even felt a sense of relief. Fortunately, this little madman didn't stay in the Demon Hall. Otherwise, with his personality, he would definitely cause a ruckus in the Demon Hall. Can you not include me? I didn't say anything. Qin Feiyong was helpless. He glanced at the core disciples and whispered, Where's the Hall Master? Didn't she come? It's enough with little Yun and me. Elder Hua smiled proudly. Then, among you core disciples, did you comprehend the strongest law? Qin Feiyong was curious. Make a guess? Elder Hua smiled mysteriously. How am I supposed to guess? Qin Feiyong was speechless. You'll know when the time comes. Elder Hua smiled. As they spoke, almost all of them entered the space-time crack. Elder Hua looked at the two of them and smiled. Let's go. The two of them nodded and followed behind Elder Hua. They stepped into the space-time crack one after another. As for the fire dragon, the black dragon, and the fire luan, the crow that the fire luan transformed into stood on the madman's shoulder. Its pair of black eyes were rolling around. No one knew what it was thinking about. As for the fire dragon and the black dragon, one on the left and one on the right, they coiled around Qin Feiyong's wrist like two exquisite bracelets. Sky Cloud Island. Qin Feiyong and the madman were naturally familiar with each other. They also had a deep impression of the little rabbit. They had never seen a rabbit that loved to drink so much. Other people's spatial divine items were used to store treasures, but the little rabbit's spatial divine item was filled with wine. At this moment, above Sky Cloud Island, there were 5 islands floating. The islands weren't big, only about half a mile in diameter. They were like 5 wooden boats that surrounded Sky Cloud Island. The 5 islands were a certain distance away from Sky Cloud Island, about 100 miles apart. Furthermore, at the edge of each island, there was a stone tablet erected. Among them, on the western island, there were 2 words carved on the stone tablet, Blood Hall. On the northern island, there were 2 words carved on the stone tablet. On the southern island, there were 2 words carved on the stone tablet. In the east, there were 2 small islands. They were about a dozen miles apart from each other. One of the islands had the words Demonic Hall carved on it, while the other had the words Rogue Cultivator Alliance carved on it. These were the 5 forces that were participating in the exchange conference. At this moment, the Blood Hall, Sky Hall, Deity Hall, and the small island of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance were all occupied. Only the small island of the Demon Hall was empty. This Demon Hall is really arrogant, making us wait for them here. On the Blood Hall's island, a young man in crimson clothes spoke as he stared at the empty island. His eyes were filled with hostility. There's nothing we can do about it. Who asked the Demon Hall to have 2 monstrous disciples now? There are rumors about Qin Feiyong and Madman Mo, even in the southern continent. On the Deity Hall's island, a young man in white clothes spoke calmly. It's the same in the northern continent. They are the most talked about now. However, at the same time, there are rumors about the Blood Hall in the western continent. I heard that the Blood Hall chased them all the way to the eastern continent to kill them. What? The dignified Blood Hall can't deal with 2 inexperienced brats? A young man in black clothes from the northern continent's Sky Hall spoke as he stared at the people from the Blood Hall in the western continent. His eyes were filled with mockery. What did you say? The young man in crimson clothes from the Blood Hall raised his eyebrows. I'm just curious. If you don't like it, just pretend I didn't say anything. The young man in black clothes from the Sky Hall chuckled. The eyes of the young man in crimson clothes from the Blood Hall flashed coldly. However, the young man in black clothes from the Sky Hall didn't take it seriously at all. He even had a provocative look on his face. Regardless of whether it was the Sky Hall, Deity Hall, or Blood Hall, all of them closed their eyes and rested. They didn't say anything to stop it, as if they were giving tacit consent. Chapter 32:24. On the island where the Rogue Cultivator Alliance was located. The Deputy Alliance leader, Hall of Famers, and Grand Elder all had their eyes closed and were silent. However, the 50 core disciples behind them looked a little nervous. It seemed like the Blood Hall, Sky Hall, and Divine Hall were giving them a lot of pressure. Swoosh! Suddenly, a space-time crack appeared. Immediately, everyone raised their heads to look. Even the leaders of the 4 major forces opened their eyes and locked their gazes on the space-time crack. Especially the Blood Hall. There was a gaze that was filled with killing intent. The owner of this gaze was Elder Hai, who had come to the Great Qin Empire and kidnapped the mermaid princess. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. Following a pleasant voice, Chu Yun walked out of the space-time crack. What a nice voice! She seems to be Chu Yun. I heard that she's Elder Hua's disciple, but now she has inherited Elder Hua's position and become the Deputy Demon Hall leader. I wonder how strong she is. Elder Hua's strength is definitely not to be underestimated, but his disciple, no matter how strong she is, she can't be that strong. The core disciples of the Sky Hall, Divine Hall, and Blood Hall were all looking at Chu Yun with unscrupulous eyes and discussing without hiding anything. Preposterous. Is Miss Yun someone you can talk about? I really don't know how your parents taught you. There's no difference in seniority at all. Senior brother, you're wrong. Their parents are long gone. I see. So, it's a bunch of trash who didn't learn anything. No wonder their mouths are so dirty. The core disciples of the Demon Hall walked out one after another. When they heard these voices, they immediately started arguing with the core disciples of the 3 major forces. At the same time, Chu Yun frowned, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she asked the core disciples of the Demon Hall to stop arguing. Others might be rude, but the people of the Demon Hall couldn't be rude. However, the leaders didn't care about the conflict between the disciples and continued to stare at the space-time crack. Finally, 3 figures walked out. He's Elder Hua? The disciples of the various major forces looked at Elder Hua in surprise. Although Elder Hua's reputation was resounding, those who had interacted with Elder Hua were basically the leaders of the various forces, such as Elder Hai. As for the disciples below, they had only heard of Elder Hua's reputation and did not know him personally. Of course, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance was an exception. After all, they were all from the Eastern continent. Who didn't know this famous person? But soon after, everyone's gaze shifted to Qin Feiyang and Frenzy, who were standing behind Elder Hua. Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo. Old Hai opened his mouth, and his tone was filled with a bone-piercing chill. Are they Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? That's not right. Why is he only a half-step sovereign? He's not that strong. Their cultivation levels are not high, but I heard that they have sovereign divine weapons. The reason why the Devil Palace took such good care of them is because of this sovereign divine weapon. To put it simply, the Devil Hall is trying to curry favor with them. I see. I was wondering why they were following behind Elder Hua. It turns out that Elder Hua is protecting them. The disciples of the various major factions began to discuss in low voices. Qin Feiyang and Frenzy glanced at each other and scanned the crowd. Of course, they knew the people from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. As for the Heavenly Hall, Blood Hall, and Deities Hall, these 3 factions had about the same number of core disciples as the Devil Hall. There were about 100 of them, and they were all sovereigns. Finally, their gazes landed on the Blood Hall's island. They were naturally familiar with Old Hai. After all, he had chased them for so long. Next to Old High was a black-clothed youth with a cold expression. They were also familiar with this person. He was the Grand Deacon who had attacked them in the heavenly cloud ocean. He was extremely powerful. Old High, Grand Deacon, long time no see. How have you been? Frenzy laughed loudly. Yes, long time no see. Seeing that all of you are doing so well, I am deeply gratified. Old High said with a fake smile. Thank you for your concern. However, you seem to be a little haggard. Have you encountered some problems? Tell me, seeing that you have taken care of us so much. Should I help you come up with an idea? Frenzy laughed. A cold light flashed in Old High's eyes as he said with a smile, Don't worry about my matters. You should pray for your own fortune. All right, then let's see who will pray for their own fortune in the end. Qin Feiyang spoke with a sneer in his eyes. Then let's wait and see. Old High chuckled as a cold light surged in his eyes. The smell of gunpowder is even stronger than before. It seems that the Blood Hall and Qin Feiyang really have a deep grudge. However, what exactly is the conflict between them? How did two inexperienced little fellows offend the Blood Hall? When the leaders of the Heavenly Hall and Deities Hall saw this scene, they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. All right, let's go. Chu Yun waved her hand and led everyone to fly towards the small island. On the island, there were a few mountain ridges with lush vegetation. The group landed on a flat grassland. This is where we will be cultivating from now on. Remember this. No matter what grudges you have in private, you must not have internal strife during the exchange and embarrass our demonic hall. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Chu Yin looked at the group of disciples and said with a cold gaze, Yes, the group of disciples nodded. All right then, the exchange will take a long time. You can arrange your own cave abodes first. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me and Elder Hua. After Chu Yun finished speaking, she looked at Qin Feiyang in frenzy and said, The two of you, follow me. The two of them looked at each other suspiciously and followed Chu Yun to the other side. Elder Hua has already said the reason why you came to participate in the exchange. As for you all, you should also know that the Blood Hall has organized this exchange for you all. Therefore, unless there is no other choice, I will not allow you all to fight. You must also remember not to act recklessly. Wait and see. Chu Yun warned. Got it. Qin Feiyang and Frenzy nodded. Chu Yun continued. In addition, you must be prepared to expose your identity. After all, your power of law is too special. Once the Rogue Cultivator Alliance sees your power of law, they will probably guess your identity in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. We have already expected this. Qin Feiyang shook his head. All right, hurry up and go cultivate. Every bit of improvement is still a bit. Chu Yun waved her hand. Qin Feiyang nodded and turned his head to glance at the island. This place was definitely not suitable for cultivation. Now that he had recovered his identity, there was no need to hide in the Black Tortoise world. Therefore, if he wanted to cultivate, it was better to go to the Black Tortoise world. After Chu Yun finished speaking, she walked to Elder Hua's side. It was unknown what they were discussing. Old Qin, are you really going to listen to that woman and wait and see? Frenzy suddenly spoke. Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at Frenzy. He saw Frenzy looking at the core disciples of the Blood Hall as if he was about to make a move. What do you want? Qin Feiyang was bewildered. Since I'm here, I will definitely cause a ruckus. Otherwise, how would it be like my character? Frenzy chuckled. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he suddenly felt powerless. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look at the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. The Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Hall's island were only 10 miles apart, so everything could be seen clearly. At this moment, the Vice Alliance leader was looking at him. Seeing Qin Feiyang looking over, the Vice Alliance leader smiled at Qin Feiyang, showing a trace of goodwill. Still acting? Frenzy also noticed the Vice Alliance leader, and a trace of disdain appeared in his eyes. If he wants to act, then let him act. Qin Feiyang secretly smiled and looked at the Vice Alliance leader. He smiled and said, "Senior is the Vice Alliance leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance?" "Yes." The Vice Alliance leader nodded. "Senior's name has long been like thunder to my ears." Qin Feiyang smiled. I'm ashamed. I only hope that you're magnanimous and don't mind what happened in the past." The Vice Alliance leader waved his hands. "It's all in the past. Let's not talk about it. Where's Yi Tian? Why don't I see him? I haven't seen him since the last time we parted ways in Wind Sea City. Didn't he come?" Qin Feiyang asked. "No. Tianer's cultivation is still shallow and he's not qualified to participate in such an exchange." The Vice Alliance leader shook his head. "That's a pity. Although we were opponents in the battle in Wind Sea City, I can tell that he's a very good person. I really hope that I can become true friends with him in the future." Qin Feiyang smiled. "After Tian returned, he often mentioned you and said that he admires you very much. Sigh. It's all my fault. If I hadn't been foolish and caused so much trouble, you and Tian, I would have become friends long ago." The Vice Alliance leader sighed, his face filled with self-blame. "It's understandable for you to do that. After all, Wang Hui is a member of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Young friend, your magnanimity really makes me ashamed. If there's a chance in the future, you must come to our Rogue Cultivator Alliance as a guest." The Vice Alliance leader said, sincerely, "There will be a chance." Qin Feiyang smiled. Look at this! The Vice Alliance leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance is actually trying to poach him in front of us. What a joke! After all, these two have sovereign weapons. The reason why the Rogue Cultivator Alliance has always been suppressed by our Demon Hall is because they don't have sovereign weapons. Originally, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance had a chance. Unfortunately, the Vice Alliance leader is muddle-headed. He actually gave the order to hunt them down for a small member. This is really like the saying, don't be afraid of a godlike opponent, but be afraid of a pig-like teammate. Not far away, a few Demon Hall disciples saw this scene and could not help but mock. "What did you say?" A disciple of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance stood out and glared at the few Demon Hall disciples. Qin Feiyang had some impression of this person. His name was Wang Kuang. Yi Tian had introduced him to him before. He had mastered the law of force and the law of war. Am I wrong? Where did the Rogue Cultivator Alliance get the confidence to come to the exchange? Take a look for yourselves. Which of the four major forces here isn't stronger than you? You're just here to humiliate yourselves. The few Demon Hall disciples sneered. They did not care about the Rogue Cultivator Alliance at all. Chapter 32:25. Bastard. What's so great about the Demon Hall? If you have the guts, come out and fight me now. Wang Kuang took a step forward and left the island. Standing in the void, a terrifying aura roared in all directions. Wang Kuang, stop fooling around. Come back. Seeing this, the deputy leader immediately shouted, My lord, they're already talking about you like this. Are you still going to admit it? Wang Kuang roared. Let them say whatever they want. We can't break the rules. If you really want to fight, wait until the exchange officially starts. At that time, fight for me and beat them until they shut up. The deputy leader said coldly, Yes. Wang Kuang responded respectfully. Looking at the few Demon Hall disciples, he sneered, Listen up, when the exchange officially starts, I will definitely make you kneel on the ground and beg for mercy. Ha! The few Demon Hall disciples suddenly laughed, their eyes filled with ridicule. Damn, this Wang Kuang is really crazy. He directly shouted at the disciples of the demon hall. Madman transmitted his voice. After all, he is a core disciple of the Hall of Fame. How can he not have a temper? Let's talk about it later. Look at the people here. Which one of them isn't a genius? No one will submit to anyone. At that time, there will definitely be a good show to watch. Qin Feiyang secretly smiled. After saying that, he looked at Sky Cloud Island and muttered, "Why don't I see that little rabbit?" "Isn't that it?" Madman pointed at a spot halfway up the mountain. Qin Feiyang looked over and saw that the little rabbit was lying on a rock halfway up the mountain. It was holding a wine jug and leisurely drinking wine while swinging its feet. It was looking at the people from the various factions with interest. Wine really never leaves its body. Qin Feiyang was speechless. "Old Qin, do you think we should bribe Bai?" Madman suddenly asked. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Look, this is its territory. As long as we curry favor with it, there will definitely be benefits for us in the future." Madman smiled slyly. "Good idea." Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up and asked, "How much wine did you and Huo Wan get last time?" "A lot. Almost emptied their wine cellar." Madman chuckled. "All right, let's go." Qin Feiyang chuckled, and the two of them left the island and flew toward Sky Cloud Island. "What are you doing?" When Chuyin saw this, her expression immediately changed, and she hurriedly shouted. Chuyun's shout immediately alarmed everyone present, and they all looked towards Qin Feiyang and Madman. "Ah!" Qin Feiyang and Madman turned to look at Chuyun suspiciously. "I'm asking you, what are you doing?" Chuyun frowned. "To Sky Cloud Island." Madman said, "What? They actually want to go to Sky Cloud Island? Don't they know that Sky Cloud Island is that little rabbit's territory? No one is allowed to enter." The disciples of the major forces were dumbfounded. "We can't go to Sky Cloud Island," Chuyin said in a deep voice. "I can't go." Qin Feiyang and Qin Haodong were puzzled. Why couldn't they go? Before the exchange began, that little rabbit had already made 3 rules with us. No one is allowed to enter Sky Cloud Island. If you go there now, it's equivalent to breaking the rules. The most important thing is to anger it. It won't do you any good, and it might even vent its anger on our demon palace. Chu Yun transmitted her voice. "I see." The two of them suddenly understood. Madman grinned and said, "It's fine." After saying that, the two of them turned around and disappeared into Sky Cloud Island. Chu Yun didn't even have time to stop them. They're quite bold. Sure enough, they can do whatever they want just because they have a sovereign weapon. However, even the major forces are quite afraid of that little rabbit, let alone the two of them. Just wait, there will definitely be a good show to watch later. Many people were gloating over his misfortune, although they didn't know the identity and strength of the little rabbit. Before coming to Sky Cloud Island, the major forces above had told them not to provoke it. This was enough to prove the little rabbit's status in Sky Cloud Sea. "Hello, Master Rabbit." Madman began to wave his hand from afar. The little rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang and Madman in astonishment. Swoosh! The two of them landed on the stone. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Long time no see." "It hasn't been long. I heard that the Eastern continent is living quite well." The little rabbit smacked its lips while drinking wine. "It's all thanks to you. If it weren't for your guidance, we might have run directly to the Western continent. So in order to thank you, we specially brought some good wine when we came." "Senior brother, quickly give it to Master Rabbit," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "Okay." Madman waved his hand, and thousands of wine jars appeared in the void. There was the Heavenly Joy Pavilion's specialty, Immortal Drunkenness, and the famous divine wine of the Eastern continent, Heavenly Mountain Dew. "Not bad. You two brats are very sensible." Looking at these wine jars, the little rabbit immediately beamed with joy. Ah, this is a bribe, right? That's not right. How did they know that this little rabbit likes to drink? Why did they prepare so much? Could it be that they know each other? Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment. This was too unexpected. Even Chu Yin and Elder Hu were dumbfounded. They knew that Qin Feiyang and Madman came from the lower realm. They also knew that the two of them must have seen the little rabbit before, because this was the only way to come from the lower realm. However, they never expected that the two of them were so familiar with the little rabbit. Master Rabbit, it seems that you're quite bored drinking alone. Why don't we stay and accompany you? Madman chuckled and said, Accompany me. The little rabbit was stunned. It glanced at the people from the blood hall and said with a sinister smile, Brat, you're looking for a backer, right? Master Rabbit's eyes are really sharp. Madman bared his teeth. But you've found the right person. As long as you're in Master Rabbit's territory, the blood hall won't dare to touch you no matter how bold they are. The little rabbit said proudly, Awesome. Come, come, come. Let's get drunk today. Madman picked up a wine jar and drank it like a cow. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. He really started drinking. Since it was already like this, he definitely had to do something. He also picked up a wine jar and drank a mouthful. Brother Rabbit, when the blood hall came, did you see this person? Madman's skill of getting close was getting better and better. After a while, he started to call him brother. After asking, he turned his back to everyone and took out a portrait. It was the portrait of the Sword Emperor. No. The little rabbit looked at the portrait and shook its head. No. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. Did the blood hall bring the Sword Emperor or not? What? This person is your friend. The little rabbit was suspicious. To tell you the truth, this person is indeed our friend. Moreover, he's currently in the blood hall. This is also the reason why we came to participate in the exchange. Don't you think the blood hall is despicable? It's fine if they want to deal with us, but they actually used our friend to threaten us. Madman had a furious expression. If that's the case, then this exchange conference is a plot against you all? The little rabbit said, I really admire you, Brother Rabbit. You're able to get to the point in one go. What do you think we can do in the face of such a powerful blood hall? Brother Rabbit, we can be considered to have some friendship. You can't just watch us brothers die. The madman looked at the little rabbit pitifully, like a helpless little lamb. That's it. The little rabbit grinned and said, Uncle Rabbit really can't interfere because I've already made an agreement with them. Uncle Rabbit will only be the referee and won't ask about anything else. Sigh. Madman had a disappointed expression when he heard this and shook his head sadly. Thinking about it, we're in the sky, cloud domain. We're not familiar with the place, and we're all alone. The only brother we know also didn't save him. How pitiful! The little rabbit's face darkened and said angrily, You're still acting with me? Although Uncle Rabbit has been staying in the Sky Cloud Island, I know all about your deeds in the Eastern Continent. How can the things you two have done be considered pitiful? I think the ones who are truly pitiful are those opponents who died in your hands. Huh! Madman laughed dryly and quickly twisted the wine jar, saying, Let's not talk about it. Come, 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 let's drink. What are they mumbling about? I really want to go over and take a look. Everyone mumbled. Old High's brows were tightly knitted together. Looking at this situation, could it be that when Qin Feiyang came to the Sky Cloud Domain, he should have built a good relationship with this little rabbit? It was even possible that Qin Feiyang went to the Eastern Continent because of this little rabbit's hint. It seemed that this matter was more difficult than he imagined. They drank until midnight. Qin Feiyang and Madman finally left the Sky Cloud Island. When they returned to the island, Chu Yin immediately stopped the two of them. What are you doing in the middle of the night? I'm telling you, I'm a man who's taken. Don't think about it. Madman smiled evilly. Chu Yin's face darkened, saying, Tell me the truth. How did you know that little rabbit? Are you stupid? This is the only way to go to the lower realm. We came from the lower realm, so we naturally know it. Madman looked down on them. Chu Yin said angrily, "What I mean is, what methods did you use to be so close to it? You still don't admit that you're stupid. Isn't it right in front of you? It's definitely wine. There's a good saying, if you want to get closer to someone, you have to cater to their interests, understand?" The disdain in Madman's eyes became even stronger, making Chu Yun gnash her teeth in hatred. "All right, I won't talk nonsense with you. We're going to cultivate." Madman waved his hand and looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly and immediately brought Madman to the black tortoise domain. Qin Feiyang was about to enter the cultivation room when Madman suddenly stopped him, saying, "Old Qin, I think we have to research a peerless divine brew." "Peerless divine brew?" Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and frowned. "But we don't know how to brew wine." Madman's meaning was obvious. If they had a peerless divine brew in their hands, then they could get closer to the little rabbit. "We don't know, but there are so many people in the black tortoise domain. There must be someone who knows." Madman chuckled. "That's true." Qin Feiyang nodded, pondered for a moment, then closed his eyes and found Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. With a thought, the two of them appeared in the castle hall. "Lord Ruler?" The two of them were stunned and quickly bowed. "I told you not to be so polite when you see me in the future. Why can't you remember?" Qin Feiyang was displeased. The two of them rubbed their heads and laughed dryly. Their respect for Qin Feiyang had long been ingrained in their bones, so it was almost impossible to erase. Chapter 32-26. Are there any famous brewmasters in our black tortoise world? Madman asked. "Brewmaster?" The two were slightly stunned. Why did he suddenly ask this? Don't tell me that there's no one in the black tortoise world that knows how to brew wine. Madman asked. "Of course there is. But we don't understand. Lord Ruler, don't you dislike drinking wine? Why did you suddenly think of looking for a brewmaster?" The two were puzzled. "I have my own plans. How about this? Gather all the famous brewers together and have them work together to brew a peerless divine brew." Qin Feiyang said. "Peerless divine brew?" The two looked at each other. "That's right. It has to be a divine brew. As for what they need, the two of you will cooperate fully. In short, give them whatever they want." Qin Feiyang said. "Okay, we will go and arrange it." The two respectfully responded and turned to leave. "With these two helping us, it's quite easy for us." Madman smiled. "Yes, the Fire Lotus was able to cultivate all these years, thanks to their help." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Then let's go and study the slaughter law together?" Madman asked. "Study the slaughter law? Aren't you in a hurry to study the death law?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Didn't they say that there was still one last step? Then they should strike while the iron is hot and quickly comprehend it. "No hurry." Madman waved his hand. Qin Feiyang was stunned. This was the first time he saw someone who wasn't in a hurry to comprehend the death law. "Let's go." Madman turned and walked into the cultivation room. Qin Feiyang also followed with large strides. Their slaughter law had already reached the fourth profound. As long as they comprehended the fifth, Qin Feiyang would be able to break through to the early stage ruler realm. Once he reached the early stage ruler realm, he would have the confidence to sweep through the core disciples of the major factions. However, it was still far from enough to deal with giants like Old Sea, because these giants all grasped a supreme profound. This was a huge hurdle. If he wanted to rely on his own strength to fight against these people, he would have to comprehend a supreme profundity. It would be best if it was the supreme profundity of the law of karma. Time flew by. 2 days passed outside. On the morning of the third day, the little rabbit walked out with a jug of wine in her hand. She stood at the peak of Sky Cloud Island and said, "I've already cultivated for 3 days. It should be about time. Let's not waste any more time and quickly begin." As soon as these words were spoken, whether it was the various big shots or the disciples cultivating on the island, they all walked to the edge of the island and looked at the little rabbit. There are 2 rules for this exchange. The first is to stop when it's appropriate, which is just a simple exchange of pointers. The second is a battle of life and death. It's your choice. As for your opponents, it's up to you. In addition, in a battle of life and death, you can fight 1 against 2, 1 against 3. As long as you have the ability, you can even overturn the entire battlefield. Lastly, apart from the sovereign weapon, you are allowed to use everything you have. That's the rules. Let's begin. After the little rabbit finished speaking, she half lay on a rock nearby and drank wine while looking at the people from the various factions. As the little rabbit finished speaking, a muscular young man from the Wandering Cultivator Alliance took the first step forward. Wang Quang, the Vice Alliance leader, was stunned and quickly said, "What are you doing? Don't you know that the bird that sticks out gets shot? Lord, this is our chance to defeat the Demon Hall. So the first battle must be between the Wandering Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Hall." Wang Quang thought. The Vice Alliance leader pondered for a moment and glanced at the people from the Demon Hall opposite him. He secretly said, "All right, be careful." Wang Quang nodded and looked at the little rabbit. "Lord, where is the battlefield?" "The entire Sky Cloud Ocean is your battlefield," the little rabbit said indifferently. Whoosh! Wang Quang immediately stepped forward and landed in the air above the ocean. He pointed at a disciple of the Demon Hall and shouted, Do you dare to come out and fight to the death?" This disciple of the Demon Hall was one of the disciples who mocked the Wandering Cultivator Alliance 3 days ago. Fight to the death. And the first one is the Demon Hall. It seems that the Wandering Cultivator Alliance is prepared to use this exchange to defeat the Demon Hall. The other 3 forces muttered in their hearts. The core disciple of the Demon Hall had an ugly expression on his face. The other 3 forces didn't challenge them, but chose to challenge the Demon Hall. Wasn't it obvious that they wanted to compete with the Demon Hall for the right to rule the Eastern continent? Go! You can only win, you can't lose. Chu Yun glanced at that disciple and shouted. Yes, that disciple responded and landed in front of Wang Quang with a cold smile on his face. Boom! Wang Quang's aura suddenly erupted. The surrounding void began to shatter, and the ocean below also surged with huge waves. However, he didn't see a single sea beast. Obviously, the sea beasts in this area had already left in advance. A mere Wandering Cultivator Alliance wants to turn the tables and become the ruler? What a joke! The Demon Hall disciple snorted coldly, and a monstrous aura also surged out. Boom! The 2 auras met in the void, and a violent wind instantly blew. Don't make it sound like your Demon Hall is very powerful. If it weren't for the sovereign divine weapon, my Wandering Cultivator Alliance might not be weaker than you. Wang Quang snorted coldly, and his body expanded with the wind, surrounded by the power of law. This was the law of force. The law of force's profundity was to strengthen the strength and power of the physical body. The first profundity, 100 feet tall divine body. The second profundity, 100 feet tall divine body. The third profundity, 10,000 feet tall divine body. The fourth profundity, 10,000 feet tall divine body. The fifth profundity, 100,000 feet tall divine body. The power of one's fist and palm could destroy the world. Wang Quang's divine body finally reached 100,000 feet tall. He was like an ancient giant in the sky above the ocean, and the invisible power turned into storms that swept in all directions. Die! Wang Quang roared, and his voice was like thunder shaking the sky. Then he stomped toward the demon hall disciple. Even if it was just a foot, the 100,000 feet tall divine body was still in existence like a mountain. The demon hall disciple was like a tiny ant in front of Wang Kuang. When he stomped, it was as if a demon god had descended to the world. The void collapsed and the world trembled. However, the demon hall disciple did not show any fear. Boom! A surge of law power appeared, turning into a huge tortoise shell in the sky. The tortoise shell was more than 10,000 feet tall, and it emitted a dazzling divine light. This was the law of earth. Wang Kuang stomped on the tortoise shell, but the shell did not show any signs of cracking, and it blocked this terrifying attack. This is the fifth profundity of the law of earth, the black tortoise shell. The black tortoise shell is known to have the strongest defense among all the law profundities. One has infinite strength, and the other has absolute defense. This battle will definitely be very exciting. Everyone was looking forward to it. Only the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Hall looked very serious. This was the first battle of the exchange, and it was also the first real battle between the core disciples of the Demon Hall and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Therefore, no matter what, they could not lose. If Wang Kuang lost, it would undoubtedly be a fatal blow to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, which was already the weaker side. It might even affect the fighting spirit and performance of the following disciples. If the Demon Hall disciple lost, it would be a great humiliation to the Demon Hall. Wang Kuang and the Demon Hall disciple naturally knew this, so they went all out. Boom! Crack! The two sides continued to collide. Even the void here had been smashed into chaos. Wang Kuang's fist was bleeding, and the black tortoise shell of the Demon Hall disciple was gradually shattering. It has already begun? At this moment, Qin Feiyang and Madman appeared and walked to Elder Hua's side, looking at Wang Kuang and the Demon Hall disciple. Yes, Elder Hua nodded. What is that? Madman stared at the black tortoise shell. The fifth profundity of the law of earth, the black tortoise shell. To be able to shatter the black tortoise shell with one punch after another, the law of force is indeed extraordinary. Elder Hua muttered, the law of force, the law of earth, then they have met their match. Madman's eyes were filled with playfulness. What else can you do besides hiding behind that shell? Watch me shatter your shell now. Wang Kuang roared, and like an ancient giant ape, he threw a punch at the cracked black tortoise shell with an imposing aura. With a loud bang, the Xuanwu tortoise shell finally shattered, and Wang Kuang's fist was also split open, revealing his white bones. Puff! Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood. Law of war, fifth level battle intent. Wang Kuang roared, and a monstrous battle intent burst out of his body. Although his body was injured, under the support of the battle intent, he was like a god of war, brave and unstoppable. Immediately after, he threw another punch at the Demon Hall disciple, and wherever his fist passed, strong winds howled and tore apart the surroundings. Do you really think that I only know how to defend? The Demon Hall disciple snorted coldly, and waves of sword light flew out. The sword light was like countless blades intertwined, emitting a sharp aura that could destroy the world. This is the fifth profundity of the law of sword, Raging Dragon. Elder Hua knew that Qin Feiyang and Madman were unaware of many of the fifth profundity, so he explained in a low voice. As soon as Elder Hua finished speaking, the sword Qi surged forward, turning into a huge divine dragon that smashed towards Wang Kuang's fist. Boom! When the two collided, a dazzling divine light erupted, and heaven and earth lost their color. In the next moment, the huge dragon formed by the sword Qi actually let out a sorrowful cry and collapsed on the spot. The Demon Hall disciple retreated, and blood flowed out of his mouth. Wang Kuang's fist, including his arm, shattered upon impact. His face was deathly pale. However, Wang Kuang was supported by the fifth level battle intent of the law of war, so he didn't feel pain or fatigue at all. He raised his other arm and threw another punch at the demon hall disciple. Every power of law had its own advantages. For example, the law of sword was invincible. For example, the law of force was invincible in terms of physical body and strength. The advantage of the law of war was that it could give a person endless fighting spirit. In other words, the law of war was a strengthening of the mind. Not only had Wang Kuang activated the law of force to strengthen his physical body and strength, but he had also activated the law of war to strengthen his mind and will. He was equivalent to a fearless battle machine. Chapter 30:27. When Wang Kuang's fist landed, the invisible force surged like a torrent. The aura of the death god enveloped the demon hall disciple. Black tortoise shell. The demon hall disciple roared. The black tortoise shell appeared and blocked Wang Kuang's fist. Clang! When the fist landed on the shell, it was as if it had landed on a shield made of divine metal, causing a deafening explosion. At the same time, the demon hall disciple waved his other hand, and the law of sword surged out, turning into a raging dragon that pounced at Wang Kuang's legs. Ah! Wang Kuang immediately screamed in pain. After all, the raging dragon was the fifth profound of the law of sword. Although Wang Kuang had activated the fifth profound of the law of force, and his physical body was extremely strong, he couldn't take it all. Both his legs were lacerated and blood splattered everywhere. Their blood dyed the sky red. I am the god of war. I am immortal. Shatter for me, Wang Kuang roared, as if he didn't feel the pain of his legs being torn apart. He raised his fist and punched at the black tortoise shell again. He was like a wild beast, exuding a valiant aura that made the scalps of the spectators go numb. He was simply a battle maniac. With another loud clang, the black tortoise shell shattered on the spot. Wang Kuang's fist also cracked and blood flowed out, but he didn't care. He didn't even frown as he punched at the demon hall disciple. Do you think you're the only one who has grasped the law of force? The demon hall disciple roared and took a step back. His body also began to expand. However, in an instant, another 100,000 feet tall giant appeared. This is his third law of force, the Vice Alliance leader mumbled. He then looked at Wang Kuang and muttered, "Do your best. You can definitely do it." After the demon hall disciple activated the fifth profound of the law of force, he also punched at Wang Kuang with extreme strength. I didn't expect you to also comprehend the law of force. However, it's useless. I also have an absolute defense. Wang Kuang sneered as a new law of force appeared. The law of earth. The demon hall disciple frowned. That's right. The fifth profound black tortoise shell. Wang Kuang roared as the Xuanwu tortoise shell appeared, instantly blocking in front of him. The fist of the devil hall disciple landed on the tortoise shell, exploding forth with a shocking might. Amazing, Qin Feiyang muttered. Yeah. Originally, I thought we were pretty strong, but now that I've seen them, I've realized that we're really not as strong as them. Madman nodded. Don't worry. Once you comprehend the fifth profundity of the laws of death, even if you can't defeat them, you'll at least be able to put up a fight. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Although the law of death was stronger than the other laws, the difference in cultivation couldn't be ignored. Even if the madman had comprehended the fifth profundity of the law of death, he would only be an initial ruler. There was still a gap of a minor realm between him and a minor ruler. In the sovereign realm, the difference of a single minor realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Can you stop talking about me? You have to work hard too. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. I work hard. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Then he shook his head and smiled. Yeah, you should continue to work hard. This fellow still didn't know that he had comprehended the fifth profundity of the law of karma. Otherwise, he would be hopping mad. Bang! Bang! rumble. Wang Kuang and the Demon Palace disciple had transformed into giants that were 100,000 feet tall. They fought wildly, causing the sky to darken and blood to flow. They both had the law of force and the law of earth. The only difference was the law of war and the law of sword. The law of sword was also a pure offensive law. As for the law of war, it could be considered a support-type law. Therefore, they both had their own advantages. Wang Kuang had the law of war. No matter how serious his injuries were, he didn't care. The more he fought, the braver he became. However, his offensive power was slightly inferior. As for the Demon Palace disciple, he had the law of sword. His offensive power was much stronger than Wang Kuang's, but his willpower and mental power were weaker. If the battle ended quickly, the Demon Palace disciple would definitely win. However, if the battle dragged on, the Demon Palace disciple would definitely lose. This was because the pain caused by every exchange of blows would deepen his exhaustion and weakness. He couldn't fight like Wang Kuang, who didn't know fatigue and pain. Even if he lost an arm or a leg, Wang Kuang would still be lively. As expected, after an hour of battle, the Demon Palace disciple was sent flying by Wang Kuang's punch. Half of his body had almost been shattered. Wang Kuang's situation wasn't much better. His 100,000 feet tall body was riddled with wounds that were so deep that his bones could be seen. He was completely covered in blood. This was basically caused by the law of sword. If it were anyone else, they would have fainted long ago. However, he was still full of energy. There wasn't the slightest hint of fatigue between his brows. His fighting spirit was soaring. This was the law of war, the representative of protracted battles. It could be said that at the same cultivation level and with the same means, the person who had grasped the law of war could be considered invincible, unless you could crush him like crushing dry weeds. The Demon Palace disciple is only SOSO. Wang Kuang laughed loudly. Don't be impudent. The battle isn't over yet. The Demon Palace disciple got up. The law of earth's fifth profundity, the black tortoise shell. The law of swords, fifth profundity, the raging dragon. The two profundities roared in the sky, carrying an apocalyptic aura as they charged toward Wang Kuang. Clang! Wang Kuang waved his hand and activated the law of earth. He grabbed the black tortoise shell and blocked in front of him. Boom! The Demon Palace disciple's black tortoise shell and the raging dragon collided with the black tortoise shell in Wang Kuang's hand. Wang Kuang's body shook as he spat out blood. The black tortoise shell in his hand also shattered. Roar! He let out a bestial roar as his 100,000 feet tall body leaned forward. It was almost as if his body was supporting the black tortoise shell. His body was also cracking inch by inch. Kill him! The Demon Palace disciple roared. His body was already collapsing to the ground. Obviously, this was his final attack. Boom! Crack! Although the black tortoise shell focused on defense, it also had lethality. Coupled with the law of swords' fifth profundity, its lethality had undoubtedly risen to another level. In less than 5 breaths of time, the black tortoise shell in Wang Kuang's hand shattered. The black tortoise shell and the dragon formed by the sword qi smashed into his chest. Puff! Wang Kuang spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying. His chest had also been pierced through by the dragon formed by the sword qi, leaving behind a huge blood puppet. Blood gushed out like a waterfall. This should be a lose-lose situation, someone muttered. No, there won't be a lose-lose situation. At this moment, the one who has the fighting spirit and will to fight is the winner. And now, the one who has the fighting spirit and will to fight is Wang Kuang. Someone else spoke. Just as expected, Wang Kuang, who was sent flying, had a dazzling light in his eyes. This battle concerns the dignity of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. I must not lose. He roared as he stepped into the void and forcefully stabilized his body. The fighting spirit, formed by the law of war, roared around him. Following that, His entire body was like a violent dragon as he charged towards the Devil Hall disciple. His hands were shattered, but he still had his feet. When he reached the top of the Demon Palace disciple, he immediately stomped his foot on the Demon Palace disciple's head. No, the Demon Palace disciple roared. Now he no longer had the strength to fight. That was because the two profound divine abilities from before were already his limit. However, Wang Kuang remained unmoved. His mountain-like foot directly landed on the head of the Devil Hall's disciple. With a loud crack, the Demon Palace disciple's head shattered. A divine light shot out from the shattered head. It was the Demon Palace disciple's divine soul. Trying to escape? Wang Kuang smiled sinisterly and stomped his foot again. Have mercy! Elder Hu could no longer sit still and hurriedly shouted. However, Wang Kuang was still unmoved. His eyes emitted monstrous killing intent as he stomped on the divine soul. With another scream, the divine soul of the Demon Palace disciple was annihilated on the spot. We won! At this moment, the members of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance couldn't help but clench their fists. Their Rogue Cultivator Alliance had actually won. Although the truth was right in front of them, they still felt like they were dreaming. They had actually defeated the Demon Palace disciple and won the first round. The members of the Demon Palace fell silent. They never expected to lose the first round to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. This was a disgrace. Vice Alliance Leader, Hall Master, Great Elder, I won. Wang Kuang was still standing in the void tenaciously. Looking at the Vice Alliance Leader and the others, a smile appeared on his blood-stained face. We won. It's been hard on you. The Vice Alliance Leader and the other two leaders were also very excited. Next, it's up to you guys. Wang Kuang looked at the disciples and said before falling straight down. When the law of war and the law of force disappeared, he immediately fainted. His 100,000 feet tall body also returned to normal. He was covered in injuries and could be described as a tragic sight. Quick! The Vice Alliance leader shouted. The Great Elder came back to his senses and immediately stepped out to catch the falling Wang Kuang. He took out a divine life pill and stuffed it into Wang Kuang's mouth. Following that, the Great Elder began to check on Wang Kuang's injuries. If he didn't look, he wouldn't know. Fortunately, Wang Kuang had the law of war to protect his body. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. He carried Wang Kuang, looked at the people of the Demon Palace, and returned to the small island. How is it? The Vice Alliance Leader and the Hall of Famers asked. His life is saved, but his vitality is greatly injured. I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to recover in a short period of time. The Great Elder said. It's good that he can keep his life. The Vice Alliance Leader heaved a sigh of relief, looked at the Hall of Famers and said, Old Chi, set up a time array and let him recuperate inside. All right. The Hall of Famers nodded, then carried Wang Kuang and left. With the time array, the speed of recovery would be faster. Then, the Vice Alliance Leader looked at Elder Hua and Chu Yin and laughed. It seems that the disciples of my Rogue Cultivator Alliance are still better. Elder Hua and Chu Yin frowned. He really didn't hide his flaunting. The other disciples of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance also began to hold their heads high and puff out their chests. Wang Kuang's victory not only gave the Vice Alliance Leader and the other three big shots a sigh of relief, it also gave these disciples confidence. It turned out that the Demon Palace was not invincible. Chapter 3228. How exciting! I never thought that the dignified Demon Hall would lose to a Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Could it be that the Rogue Cultivator Alliance is the overlord of the Eastern Continent? An ear-piercing laughter sounded. Elder Hua, Chu Yin, and the 100 or so disciples of the Demon Hall immediately looked in the direction of the voice. They saw Elder High standing in the front row with a brilliant smile on his face. It's just a battle, what can it mean? Elder was said indifferently. Is this just a battle? Ask everyone here. Who doesn't understand the meaning of this battle? Could it be that, in your eyes, this is just a game? Elder High didn't hide the ridicule on his face. Elder's eyes darkened. The group of disciples behind him was also furious. However, with Elder High's status and identity, they didn't dare to curse. They only dared to be angry, but didn't dare to say anything. Ayaya, let me see. Where did this old dog come from? Suddenly, an exceptionally loud voice rang out. Everyone was stunned and looked in the direction of the voice. It turned out to be Madman. This fellow was indeed worthy of being a lawless person. He directly scolded in front of everyone. The core disciples of the demon hall couldn't help but admire him at this moment. Madman pretended to look for a while, then looked at Elder High and said, "So it's you, old dog. I was wondering who it was." Elder High's eyes suddenly turned cold and were filled with shocking, killing intent. "You're still glaring at me? Look at your eyes. They're exactly the same as a dog's eyes." Madman's face was filled with disdain. "Ha ha!" As soon as he said that, it immediately caused everyone to burst into laughter, especially the disciples of the demon hall. They laughed happily. Even Elder Hua and Chu Yin couldn't help but laugh. "Kid, you haven't died before, right? How dare you talk to Elder High like that?" A purple-clothed youth jumped out and glared at Madman. Madman glanced at the purple-clothed youth and said disdainfully, "Is there something wrong with your head?" The purple-clothed youth was stunned. "If there's nothing wrong with your head, why would you say such stupid words? If I've died before, would I be standing here talking to you? Idiot!" Madman rolled his eyes. The purple-clothed youth was so angry that he trembled. What kind of logic was this? Wasn't it just a sentence? Why are you being so serious? The old are fools and the young are idiots. Alas, your blood hall is truly hopeless. Madman shook his head. "Bastard, I want to fight you." The purple-robed youth took a step forward and glared at the madman. "You?" Madman sized up the purple-robed young man and chuckled. "Back then, that old dog by your side and the Grand Deacon by your side came with 3 sovereign divine weapons, but they couldn't stop us. Little punk like you? Go play in the mud." The purple-robed young man's body was trembling, and his nose was crooked from anger. At this moment, another young man walked out and stood next to the purple-robed young man. He looked at the madman and said, "You also know that that's only if you have a sovereign weapon. However, the rules of the exchange clearly state that the use of sovereign weapons is prohibited." "Rules? I'm not even afraid of your blood hall. Do you think I'll care about a mere rule? You don't believe me when I say you're stupid." Madman sneered. This, the people of the blood hall immediately became restless. With what Qin Feiyang and the madman had done over the years, they might really take out their sovereign weapons and kill them. Old High's eyes couldn't help but darken. He looked at the little rabbit and asked, "Do the rules you set still count?" The little rabbit glanced at the madman and then at Old High. Uncle Rabbit's words naturally count. Old High let out a sigh of relief. The little rabbit looked at the madman and said, "Don't break the rules. Otherwise, don't say that Uncle Rabbit didn't give you face. Since Uncle Rabbit said so, what else can I do?" The madman grinned. To be honest, the madman really didn't care about the rules. With his personality, if he really angered the little rabbit, it would be useless even if he had it. At most, he would just have one more enemy. What was there to be afraid of? Of course, it hadn't reached that point yet, so there was no need to go against the little rabbit. Enough. The first battle is over. Let's continue. The little rabbit said indifferently and continued to drink. "Madman, Mo, good job. I suddenly realize that you're quite pleasing to the eye. Let's be friends." The core disciples of the demon hall surrounded the madman. Do I need you to be pleasing to the eye? The madman didn't buy it. Weren't they just a bunch of people with decent talent? Who were they putting on an arrogant attitude for? The disciples' faces darkened. They were really getting carried away. Madman Mo, do you dare to accept my challenge? On the other side, the purple-clothed youth from the blood hall shouted, I told you to go play in the mud. Don't you understand? The madman frowned. The purple-clothed youth chuckled and said mockingly, I think you don't dare. I don't dare? The madman raised his eyebrows. Yeah, I think you can only train your mouth. What a joke. You don't even dare to accept the challenge of a mere half-step sovereign? Is this what a disciple of the demon hall is like? I think it's time for the overlord of the eastern continent to change. The purple-clothed youth smiled. Half-step sovereign? The madman was stunned. Qin Feiyong was also surprised. Previously, they really didn't pay attention to the cultivation of the purple-clothed youth. This included the others, because they were all amused by the madman and didn't pay attention to the strength of the purple-clothed youth. But now that they looked carefully, he really was a half-step sovereign. A half-step sovereign also came to join in the fun? Senior brother, you can't be careless. Qin Feiyong walked to the madman's side and whispered, What do you mean? The madman was suspicious. A half-step sovereign came to participate in the exchange conference and kept shouting. There's only one possibility. He definitely has something to rely on. Qin Feiyong messaged. That's true. The madman nodded. Are you coming or not? Qin Feiyong, why don't you come? The purple-clothed youth looked at Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong smiled but didn't say anything. Haha, so it's just two idiots. The purple-clothed youth shook his head and laughed. The other core disciples of the blood hall couldn't help but laugh. I'll fight with you. Suddenly, a black-clothed youth walked out from the group of core disciples and locked his gaze on the purple-clothed youth. You. The purple-clothed youth glanced at the black-clothed youth and shook his head. I'm not interested in you. You don't dare. The black-clothed youth sneered. You have the nerve to say this? A low-stage sovereign challenging a half-step sovereign. Can you be any more shameless? The purple-clothed youth had a mocking expression. Hearing this, the black-clothed youth's expression froze. The purple-clothed youth ignored the black-clothed youth and looked at Qin Feiyong and the madman. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I came to participate in the exchange conference because of you two. Because of us. Qin Feiyong was stunned. I heard that you two are very powerful in the eastern continent, so I wanted to see just how powerful you two are. But now that I see it, it's really not as good as the rumors. The purple-clothed youth shook his head. At this moment, no one from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, the Sky Hall, or the Divine Hall stepped out to challenge them. They were all looking at Qin Feiyong and the madman with a playful expression. This was because the big shots of the various forces all knew clearly that the reason the Blood Hall had organized this exchange conference was to deal with Qin Feiyong and madman. At the same time, the Sky Hall and the Divine Hall's leaders were also interested in Qin Feiyong and the madman, so they were all waiting to watch the show. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Elder Hua looked at Qin Feiyong and the madman and said, Come back! Let's go. Qin Feiyong pulled the madman and turned around to leave. Qin Feiyong, madman Amo, if you two don't agree, then I'll chop off one of the Sword Emperor's arms first. But at this moment, a sinister laugh suddenly sounded in their minds. What? The two of them stiffened and turned to look at Elder Hai at the same time, because the person who sent them the voice transmission was Elder Hai. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. The Sword Emperor is in my spatial divine item. If I want to kill him, it'll be as easy as crushing an ant. Elder Hai thought. When Qin Feiyong and the madman heard this, killing intent surged in their eyes and they couldn't help but clench their fists. What's going on? Chu Yin looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman in surprise. There's a problem. Elder Hua looked at the two of them, then looked at Elder Hai and thought, it must be this old thing secretly threatening them. When Chu Yin heard this, she immediately stepped forward and stopped Qin Feiyang and the madman. She transmitted her voice, don't be rash. If you two agree now, even if you defeat them, they will still continue to challenge you. Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other. Trust me, I'll help you. Chu Yin thought, sure, the Sword Emperor is in Elder Hai's spatial divine item. Help us rescue him now. The madman transmitted his voice. It's inside his spatial divine object. Chu Yin was stunned. That's right. He just said it himself. The madman said, this. Chu Yin hesitated. We can't do it, right? So we have to rely on ourselves. And right now we have no choice. The madman took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. Do you want to go first, or should I? Up to you. Qin Feiyang shrugged his shoulders. Then I'll go first. The madman chuckled and took a step forward and landed in the sky above the sea on the left. He accepted the challenge. The eyes of the powerhouses of the various forces lit up. The core disciples below also had expressions of anticipation. What kind of method would this person use? Feiyu, don't show mercy. Let him know the power of our blood hall. That's right. Torture him well and let him experience a life worse than death. The core disciples of the blood hall looked at the purple-clothed youth and roared at the same time. Don't worry. I'll let him deeply understand the power of our blood hall. The purple-clothed youth smiled proudly, then took a step forward and walked over to the madman. Sigh. Elder Hua and Chu Yin looked at each other and couldn't help but sigh. They had already expected that the blood hall would force the two of them to make a move, but they didn't expect it to come so quickly. They really couldn't wait to deal with the two of them on the first day. Chapter 32:29. The purple-clothed youth landed in front of Madman and smiled. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jiang Feiyu, the #1 genius of the Blood Hall. Madman was stunned. Why was it another self-proclaimed monstrous genius? Were all the youths of the sky, cloud domain so self-righteous? Did I say anything when I grasped 6 types of law force? What about you? I don't believe you don't have a name. Jiang Feiyu looked at Madman. Are you here to fight or to make friends? Did you come to the wrong place? Madman was speechless. Jiang Feiyu was stunned and nodded. All right, since you're going to die soon, your name isn't important. Say it. Are we going to stop here or fight to the death? I really don't know where you find your confidence from. Madman had a helpless expression. He had never seen such an arrogant person, especially in front of him. Confidence comes from strength. Hurry up. Are we going to stop here or fight to the death? Jiang Feiyu said. What do you think? Madman chuckled. Seems like we have the same idea. Fight to the death. Jiang Feiyu chuckled. Laugh. Laugh to your heart's content because you won't be able to laugh soon. Madman bared his teeth. Ha ha! Jiang Feiyu raised his head and laughed, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. A battle between half-step sovereigns. I hope it'll be interesting. The little rabbit muttered and then shouted, since we've already decided to fight to the death, then bystanders are not allowed to interfere. Let's begin. Right, little crazy brat. Have that crow on your shoulder leave the battlefield. The crow that the fire wand transformed into had been lying on Madman's shoulder. It had the cultivation of a perfect sovereign. If it suddenly attacked Jiang Feiyu when Madman and Jiang Feiyu were fighting, would there be any meaning in continuing the battle? Because it would be an instant kill. Go. Madman patted the fire wand's head. The fire wand immediately spread its wings and turned into a stream of light that landed on Qin Feiyang's shoulder. Then let's begin. Killing intent, flashed in Jiang Feiyu's eyes. Boom! At almost the same time, the auras released by the two collided like two invisible dragons. Woo-woo! A gust of wind suddenly blew in the void here, and a destructive wave surged in all directions with an earth-shattering force. The madman's gaze turned cold, and he said, "Divine arts, divine artifacts, don't use these fancy things. Just directly activate the energy of the laws. As you wish. Open your eyes wide and see what a real monster is." Jiang Feiyu's arrogance shot through the sky. A wave of heavenly thunder rolled out and turned into a 10,000-meter-long thunder dragon. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards the madman. Law of lightning? The madman was slightly taken aback. His body trembled as he also released a 10,000-foot-long lightning dragon. Ding! Accompanied by a series of dragon roars, the two lightning dragons collided with a loud bang, and all directions were destroyed. You dare to take out a mere third profound. Thunder's fury? The madman smiled savagely and pointed at the sky. Tribulation clouds gathered, and in an instant, the sky above turned into lightning. He shouted, "Fourth profound, 9 heavens, divine thunder!" Crack! Following a series of deafening booms, countless bolts of lightning flashed, and a destructive aura enveloped an area of tens of millions of miles. Haha! I didn't expect that not only did you comprehend the law of lightning, but you've also comprehended the fourth profound. Jiang Feiyu laughed loudly. With a point of his index finger, more tribulation clouds gathered in the sky. It was also the fourth profound. At this moment, the 9 heavens divine thunder summoned by the two madly collided in the sky, killing each other. Could the fifth profound that this person grasped also be the law of lightning? Qin Feiyang looked at the sky, his eyes flickering. If that was the case, then there was no suspense in this battle, because the madman also grasped the law of death. Unless the other party also grasped an ultimate law like the law of death, no matter how hard they tried, they wouldn't be a match for the madman. The two profound collided, and they were almost evenly matched. After all, with the same cultivation and same profound, it was hard to tell who was better. Just when everyone thought that the two would activate their fifth profound, Jiang Feiyu waved his hand, and a monstrous killing intent appeared. Law of slaughter. What does this mean? Why did he activate the law of slaughter? Could it be that the fifth profound he grasped isn't the law of lightning, but the law of slaughter? Everyone was suspicious. My talent can't be compared to yours. Jiang Feiyu looked at the madman with contempt and shouted, "For profound, come out for me!" The first profound, sort of slaughter. The second profound, sort of slaughter. The third profound, killing intent domain. The fourth profound, 10,000 dragons god slaying. The 4 profound meanings had all appeared. This sea area was directly shrouded by the killing intent of the 4 profound, as if it had turned into an Azura hell, especially the 4th profound. 10,000 blood dragons roared in the sky, and one could vaguely see a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Kill! Jiang Feiyu waved his hand, and the 4 profound suddenly turned into a torrent that charged at the madman. Looking at this scene, the madman wanted to laugh instead. This person played so many tricks just to show off his law of slaughter in front of everyone. Back in the Hall of the Exalted, Muziu also showed off in front of him, and now Jiang Feiyu did it again. He really couldn't understand what was there to show off. Since that was the case, then he might as well fulfill his wish. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of thunder, the madman still used the 4 profound of the law of lightning. Is that all you've got? Jiang Feiyu was stunned. I don't like to do these useless things. If you want to perform, then perform. The madman raised the corner of his mouth with a hint of mockery. But Jiang Feiyu didn't care at all. Boom! The 4 profound divine abilities collided, and it ended in a draw again. How boring. I thought you had a lot of law of slaughter. Jiang Feiyu shook his head in disappointment. Continue. The madman took a step back and simply put his hands behind his back, watching this person perform. Your attitude really pisses me off. Jiang Feiyu raised his eyebrows, and a wave of law of slaughter surged out. This was the law of sword. The law of lightning, the law of slaughter, the law of sword. These three laws were all comprehended by Feiyu when he was in the imperishable stage. His talent can be said to be number one in the history of our blood hall. A mere madman is simply an ant-like existence in front of him. The core disciples of the blood hall couldn't help but mock. Comprehending three laws at the imperishable stage gives him the right to be arrogant? Fortunately, Mo Wuyuan and Mo Wuhui aren't here. Otherwise, they would definitely laugh their heads off. When the disciples of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance heard this, they couldn't help but secretly despise them. Although the vice leader colluded with the blood hall, the disciples below didn't know about it. So in the eyes of these disciples, they were more hostile towards the blood hall. Of course, as for the situation with Qin Feiyang and Mo Wuji, they didn't dare to say it in public. After all, the higher-ups had given them a strict order. Clang! Waves of sword qi enveloped all directions. However, Jiang Feiyu's law of sword had only activated the third profound. In other words, his law of sword had only comprehended the third profound. That's it. The madman looked at him in astonishment. Isn't that enough? Jiang Feiyu raised his eyebrows. 3 laws? I thought you had mastered 5 or 6 types of laws. What are you being so arrogant for? If you're considered a monstrous genius, then our demon hall, no, the entire eastern continent, everyone is a monstrous genius. The madman was speechless. That's right. What's there to be proud of with just 3 laws? Apart from the blood hall, the people from the other forces had a disdainful look on their faces. Is that really the only thing? However, Qin Feiyang revealed a suspicious look. This was because he had been observing the core disciples of the blood hall. These people's expressions revealed their absolute confidence in Jiang Feiyu. If that was the case, they definitely wouldn't trust Jiang Feiyu so much. Moreover, such talent wasn't enough to be called the number 1 core disciple of the blood hall. This person should be hiding other laws. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Feiyu stared at the madman, but he wasn't angry. On the contrary, the mockery on his face became thicker. Crack! Clang! The 4 profound meanings of the law of slaughter and the law of thunder appeared one after another. In addition to the 3 profound meanings of the law of sword, they immediately attacked the madman. The madman dodged again and again. It seemed very intense, but it didn't cause any damage to the madman at all. All the profound abilities blasted into the sea below. Have you performed yet? The madman stopped in the void, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and looked at Jiang Feiyu with a playful look. Ha ha! Jiang Feiyu raised his head and laughed again. That contemptuous look was as if he was looking at a clown. Are you addicted to laughing? The madman began to feel annoyed. What a hateful face. I'll definitely beat him up later. If that's all, can I be called the number 1 core disciple of the blood hall? Kid, I will let you broaden your horizons now. Jiang Feiyu laughed arrogantly, and the power of 2 laws suddenly surged out. Law of war, and the other is, what? This is, the madman's eyes trembled suddenly. The other law was black and gray, exuding a strong aura of death, as if the god of death had arrived. This is actually the law of death. The madman's face was full of disbelief. This person actually comprehended the law of death? At the same time, Qin Feiyang was also very surprised. This was really unexpected. Law of death, law of slaughter, law of war, law of thunder, law of sword. This Jiang Feiyu's talent was absolutely top-notch. This number 1 core disciple of the blood hall really wasn't bragging. At the same time, The giants and disciples of the various forces all had a look of shock on their faces, not to mention the other 4 laws. Just the law of death was one of the strongest laws. In the sky cloud realm there was a saying, anyone who comprehended the strongest law, even if it was only one kind of law, as long as they didn't die prematurely, they would definitely become an overlord of the sky cloud realm in the future. Just like the giants of the various superforces, they each mastered one kind of law. This was also the reason why the Rogue Cultivator Alliance attached so much importance to Qin Feiyang and the Madman. They really didn't expect that the Blood Hall would give birth to such a terrifying monster. Chapter 30-230. Haha, are you scared? Compared to me, who do you think you are? Jiang Feiyu laughed arrogantly, as if he had lost his sense of measure. I'm sure it's okay. Madman nodded. What? Just okay? Kid, you don't know what you're capable of. How dare you say such words? Jiang Feiyu looked at Madman with contempt. Are you really stupid? This is a battle, not a competition of talent. Can you win just by comparing talent? If you want to win, it depends on your strength. Madman despised. Strength? The 4th profound of the law of slaughter, the 3rd profound of the law of sword, the 3rd profound of the law of war, the 2nd profound of the law of death, the law of thunder, the 5th profound. And you dare to talk about strength with me? Is my strength not enough? Haha, Jiang Feiyu laughed. The law of death is only the 2nd profound. Madman was stunned. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. It was only the 2nd profound. What qualifications did he have to be arrogant? One must know that Madman had already comprehended the 4th profound. Jiang Feiyu's talent was indeed 1 in a million in the sky cloud realm, and he indeed had the qualifications to be arrogant. However, he had found the wrong opponent. There were so many genius disciples from various forces, and he didn't pick anyone but Madman. Wasn't this asking for humiliation? Still not convinced. Jiang Feiyu looked at Madman, and the ridicule on his face became thicker. I'm convinced, Madman nodded. Then kneel down and beg for mercy, and I will spare your life. Jiang Feiyu laughed proudly. Ah, Madman looked at him in shock and laughed. I think you misunderstood me. When I said I was convinced by your pretentious behavior, not your strength. Jiang Feiyu raised his eyebrows and sneered. Pretending to be calm, what's the point? I'm pretending to be calm? Madman was angry and wanted to laugh. This person really had a lot of talent, but he didn't have a brain at all. In fact, people like Jiang Feiyu weren't stupid. It was just that because his talent was too good, he was often pursued and praised, which led to his arrogant personality. He didn't put anyone in his eyes and felt that he was invincible. This was a typical dandy. In their eyes, other than themselves, everyone else was trash. Whoosh! Suddenly, Madman turned to look at Old C. The disdain in Old High's eyes was undisguised. Old Dog High, you're actually willing to let such a genius participate in the exchange. Aren't you afraid that he'll die halfway? The Madman looked at him playfully. Do you have the ability? Old High sneered. Haha, Madman couldn't help but raise his head and laugh when he heard this. Qin Feiyang looked at Elder Hua and asked, losing such a monstrous genius should be a great loss for the Blood Hall, right? Of course. Elder Hua nodded and smiled. He naturally understood what Qin Feiyang and the Madman meant. They wanted to kill Jiang Feiyu while he was still in the cradle. He couldn't help but look forward to it. When Jiang Feiyu died in the hands of a lunatic, what kind of expression would the group of people from the Blood Hall show? Hearing Madman's unbridled laughter, Old High's eyes flashed with killing intent. He then glanced at Jiang Feiyu. Jiang Feiyu understood. Boom! The law of lightning roared out. In this place, only I have the right to laugh. Jiang Feiyu took a step forward. The tribulation clouds in the sky rumbled and formed a huge lightning pool. In the middle of the lightning pool, a strand of lightning energy floated. Although it looked inconspicuous, it emitted an aura that could destroy the world. This was because this was the fifth profundity of the law of lightning. Thunderclap, kneel and tremble before me. Jiang Feiyu roared. It was as if he had changed into a different person. His killing intent soared into the sky. As he waved his hand, the lightning fell at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. The one who should kneel and tremble is you. A bloody light flickered in the madman's eyes. The murderous aura that was hidden in his body was released without reservation. At this moment, he was like a demon king that had descended into the world. This was his true side. Displaying such a scene also meant that he had already developed the intention to kill. Crack! Boom! He pointed at the sky, and the lightning pool appeared one after another. It's also the fifth profundity of the law of lightning. Both their first and fifth profundities are the law of lightning. It seems that they are quite fated. Someone laughed in surprise. Boom! The two profundities collided, and the world was instantly enveloped by heavenly might. At this moment, they were like two gods of lightning. They constantly collided, causing the void to collapse and the sea to churn. The sky was filled with the power of lightning. I didn't expect that your first and fifth profundity would also be the law of lightning. However, I still have other laws. Jiang Feiyu sneered. The law of slaughter roared out, turning into tens of thousands of blood dragons that charged toward the madman. Monstrous killing intent filled the air. Don't be too surprised because there are still many things that you can't imagine. The madman cackled. His eyes seemed to be soaked in blood, as if there was a sea of corpses floating within. Boom! In the next moment, he had also activated the fourth profundity of the law of slaughter. Tens of thousands of blood dragons roared in the sky and charged toward the other party. Immediately, the void above became the battlefield of the blood dragons. 20,000 blood dragons crazily pounced toward the other party, their roars shaking the sky. Jiang Feiyu frowned and roared, Sword domain! Tens of thousands of sword chi appeared, turning into a huge domain that enveloped the madman. This was the third profundity of the law of sword. Radiant sacred sword. The madman laughed. The law of light appeared, turning into a sacred sword that slashed toward the sword domain. What? The third profundity of the law of light. Jiang Feiyu was stunned. The core disciples of the Blood Hall were also very surprised. Up until now, this person had already displayed 3 laws. And the profundities weren't low. The law of lightning, the 5th profundity. The law of slaughter, the 4th profundity. The law of light, the 3rd profundity. At this moment, this person's strength didn't seem to be weaker than Jiang Feiyu. Don't worry. Feiyu also has the law of death and the law of war. I don't believe that he also has 5 laws. Someone said, That's true. I heard that this person was only at the imperishable realm when he fought with the grandson of the Deputy Alliance leader of the Wandering Cultivator Alliance. Clearly, he just broke through to half-step ruler not long ago. For such a person, mastering 3 laws is already his limit. The others also expressed their opinions. Is that really the case? Qin Feiyang glanced at the Blood Hall's side, and a trace of ridicule crept up his eyes. If they really thought of the madman that way, they wouldn't even know how they died. Moreover, the law of light was the weakest of all the laws the madman had grasped. This was because he had comprehended the law of light in the end. However, in recent years, the madman and Qin Feiyang often got together to discuss the power of laws, including the law of light. Coupled with the 1 day, 1,000 years time array, the madman had easily comprehended the 3rd profundity, radiant sacred sword. However, the law of light wasn't the main point. The main point was the madman's law of death. One was the 4th profundity, while the other was the 2nd, The difference was like heaven and earth. Yet, Jiang Feiyu and the Blood Hall's people were still complacent. What a joke. Not bad, not bad. 3 laws. You can be considered a moldable talent. Unfortunately, your opponent today is me. Jiang Feiyu laughed loudly. Boom! He activated the law of war, and a monstrous battle intent surged. Immediately after, he activated the law of death. A wave of death energy surged out like a giant wave and rushed toward Madman. Yes, you can be considered a moldable talent. Unfortunately, you met me. In terms of talent, you're not even 1/10 of me. What are you being so arrogant for? The madman shouted. The law of war and law of death were instantly activated. What? Jiang Feiyu froze on the spot. The Blood Hall's people, Treasury Elder High, and the head deacon also had a look of disbelief. Even the core disciples of the Rogue, Cultivator Alliance, Sky Hall, Deity Hall, and Devil Hall were dumbfounded as they looked at the madman. This person had actually grasped the law of war and law of death. What was going on? They had never heard of such a situation before. There were no less than 400 to 500 people present. Among so many people, only Qin Feiyan, Elder Hua, Chu Yin, Black Dragon, Fire Dragon, and Fire Luan were relatively calm, because they all knew. As for the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, they only knew about the madman's other identity, Mo. Wu Hui. Interesting, interesting. Even the little rabbit perked up and watched the madman's battle. Boom! The 2 powers of death collided, and Jiang Feiyu's power of death was annihilated on the spot. Then, the madman's power of death did not stop and continued to attack Jiang Feiyu. After all, their levels were different. The madman had already comprehended the 4th profundity, while Jiang Feiyu had only comprehended the 2nd profundity. The power of the madman's power of death was naturally stronger than Jiang Feiyu's. This is impossible. Jiang Feiyu shook his head. He seemed to have suffered a huge blow and did not even notice the power of death that was heading towards him. It was not hard to imagine. A person who was so arrogant, conceited, and complacent, who had regarded his opponent as an ant, only to suddenly discover that this ant was actually not inferior to him. This kind of feeling of disparity and defeat would be especially intense. Feiyu, watch out! Someone from the Blood Hall shouted. Jiang Feiyu shuddered and suddenly came back to his senses. Looking at the power of death that was already in front of him, he immediately broke out in cold sweat. Without hesitation, he activated the thunder armor. Boom! The power of death struck his body. Although he was protected by the thunder armor and the law of war, he was still sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood. His power of death can actually crush Jiang Feiyu's power of death. Could it be that his comprehension of the law of death is higher than Jiang Feiyu's? Finally, someone realized the important point. As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked and looked at the madman in surprise, especially the people from the Blood Hall. The madman's power of death could crush Jiang Feiyu's power of death. It was obviously higher than Jiang Feiyu's. The situation was not good. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.